This week, we welcome Veronica Schmitt. She's the Senior Digital Forensic Scientist at DFIRLabs. She's going to be doing a technical segment. There's also another technical segment coming up after that. Yossi Sassi will join us. He is part of the advisory board at Javelin Networks and co-founder of a cybersecurity research firm. In the security news, fear of AI tactics, the FDA releases cybersecurity guidance. Watch hackers steal a Tesla. Syria's D-Link router security flaws may never be patched. And California attempts to address default passwords. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. The average time between being hacked and realizing you've been hacked is 1 year. Can you afford to let an intruder roam your network for that long? Can your company weather the fallout when this comes to light? Black Hills Information Security can find the bad guys in your network and train you to do it yourself. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a hunt teaming engagement can help you find a persistent threat in your network. Domain Tools help security analysts turn threat data into threat intelligence. They take indicators from your network, including domains and IP addresses, and connect them with nearly every active domain on the internet. Those connections drive risk assessments, help profile attackers, guide online fraud investigations, and map cyber activity to attacker infrastructure. Fortune 1000 companies, global government agencies, and leading security solutions vendors use the Domain Tools platform as a critical ingredient in their threat investigations and proactive defenses. For more information, visit securityweekly.com/domain tools.
Two Pauls, one cup? I don't know. Maybe it was just one Paul, but there were two cups. One Paul, two cups? I don't know. But anyway, it's Paul.
Welcome, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly, episode 580. It is, in fact, October 25th, 2018. We're recording live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. And I'd like to now introduce the wonderful, the fabulous, the Doctor, Dr. Doug White. What's going on, Doctor?
It's the unraveling.
It's the unraveling.
The
You
unraveling.
need a new cigar, dude. That one came like all...
It's unraveling, yeah.
It is, yes.
No, hey, 2 hours in traffic, but I got here, so.
Thank you for
That's
weathering
right.
the storm.
The sacrifice, yeah.
The sacrifice you make
I
just
tell
to
you.
be here.
That's why I look this way.
You need to get a better cigar.
Oh, well, it'll be okay.
We'll figure it out.
So there's scotch, so.
There's always scotch.
After a while, you don't know about the cigar. You just sort
It's true. It is very true. Mr. Patrick Laverty from Rapid7 is here with us in studio. Patrick, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Paul. And one of the things that I'm probably a little bit scared of now is if somebody doesn't know what Doug was just referring to with two cups, one Paul, and they go Google it.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah, don't.
Don't do that.
No,
don't do that.
No,
That's
definitely.
bad.
Under
Especially
no
not after a meal.
No, don't ever Google two Pauls, one cup.
No.
Yes.
That's,
Now, all of our hosts are in studio,
yeah.
which is
How about
pretty
that?
cool because now I don't have to introduce anyone of a host on the line via Skype. I do have to introduce our guest. Before we do that, though, we've got a couple of announcements. If you're interested in quality over quantity, having meaningful conversations instead of just a badge scan, and you like going to Disney World, you should come to InfoSec World 2019, April 1st through the 3rd. That's at Disney's Contemporary Resort. InfoSec World 2019 will be there. It'll be a lot of fun. We'll be there as well. You can connect and network with like-minded individuals in search of actionable information. And I can, attest to this conference. It's really good. Doug,
Yeah,
you've been there
it
before.
was fun.
I mean, the reason why you hear us talking about it and we go there is because they're a great organization to work with,
Yeah.
and they put on a great conference. It is one of the most well-run and organized conferences on the planet.
Everything
Yeah.
was really smooth. There was tons of stuff there. There were tons of sponsors there. There were tons of people there doing great presentations.
Yeah.
And it was at Disney. So, I mean, it's like, what's not to like?
It was no Mickey Mouse operation is what you're saying.
That was a dad joke.
I'll be here all week. Thanks.
We do have a discount code for
Try the veal.
InfoSec World. The discount code is OS19-Sec Week. That gets you 15% off the conference. So make sure that you go out and register today. Already.
Daffy.
Veronica intro. Oh, wait. I wasn't supposed to read that part from the teleprompter. I'm sorry. Don't you know Burgundy reads whatever is on the teleprompter? Veronica Schmitt is here with us. She's a partner at DFIRLabs. She is a forensicator, an avid researcher in digital forensics. I met Veronica at DEF CON. This is one of the reasons why I like going to DEF CON.
Yeah.
Essentially, Veronica came to the booth, and I was like, that's an interesting accent. And I think someone was trying to guess the accent, and I guessed it right. Is that right, Veronica? I think I guessed it right, and then a new relationship is born, and now here, Veronica is on the show. Imagine that. Veronica, welcome.
Good evening, everyone.
It's so nice to have you. Thank you for coming on and talking about the topic you're going to talk about today is really interesting. I was glad to have Doug here, who also has a background in forensics. And it's basically picking apart file systems without using any kind of tools. So doing it kind of like manually with a hex editor.
Hardcore. That was how forensics was originally done.
I thought it was sifting through the punch cards. Is that?
Well, there's that kind of forensics, where you have to.
I got you.
Yeah.
But this is the original. Like before we had tools, we did it with a hex.
That's when you could do a disk wipe with a fire.
That's right. It's true. So, Veronica, welcome, and please feel free to stop this hilarity and continue on actual content that people will enjoy.
Yeah. I think you actually have my topic confused. That was the one that we were originally going to do, but I said to you it's a bit short notice and a short time to do. So I did email you today or earlier this morning.
That's right. Yeah, I suck at email, but. So, yeah, continue. So what's the segment going to be about? Now I'm on the edge of my seat.
So let me ask, do you guys know what SRAM is in Windows 10?
Say that again.
SRAM, your System Resource Usage Monitor.
Oh,
yeah, that was the other topic.
I'm going to say no.
No, I don't know.
I think that's why I chose the other topic, because I didn't want to feel stupid and not know what ISRAM is, and now.
Okay, so if you right click on your screen and you go Task Manager and you go see all the applications running in your network connections that Windows gives, so that you can do diagnostics on your system, that's basically what it is.
Okay.
But it's a very sneaky little piece of artifact because all that information is dumped into an ESE database. So you can actually pull that file apart and reconstruct executables and forensic artifacts to see what actually happened on a system.
That's cool.
So that's basically a new artifact that has came about in Windows 8.1. And it's a very fairly unknown one. So I spent a couple of days pulling it apart and actually seeing what evidence I can pull out of it. And there's an awesome Python command line tool that I'll be demoing that pipes it into an Excel spreadsheet that you can do thread hunting and analytics on.
Did you write this Python script?
No, it's a phenomenal SANS instructor, Matt, that did it.
Okay.
I'm a firm believer that why reinvent the wheel if the tool's already there.
Totally agree.
But it's not a pretty tool. It's not a commercial tool. It's freely available. But it's fairly straightforward and actually one of the best Python tools I've seen in a while.
Awesome.
Well, I'd like to see it.
Yeah, go for it. It's all you now, Veronica. Take us away.
Here we go. Okay, can you guys see my slides?
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly the reaction we had. Say what?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm V or Veronica. That's a few places that you can find me. I'm also known as the Poison Pixie. The guys from Security Weekly would realize that I'm probably the one that hassles everyone at DEF CON and does scavenger hunts and the impossible. So if you want to hit me up, there's my information. Feel free to contact me. Okay, so what the heck is SRAM? Now, when I first read about this, I thought, But how does the System Resource Usage Manager actually mean anything to us in forensics? Because in forensics, it's all about timelines and reconstruction of events that happened. Well, here's a little thing that no one knows. Microsoft actually keeps all that information in an ESE database. So this literally has a historical activity of your whole system. How it works is every 60 minutes, this information is written to the database. But in between that, temporarily, it is stored in registry. So it's effectively a continuous monitoring of your system and every activity on the system.
And Veronica, this is turned on by default in Windows?
It is. It is because it's part of the Windows Diagnostic Services. So it's something that most people are unaware of, and it's something that you can't really switch off because it affects Windows' ability to do diagnostics on the system. So that's why I say it's a very sneaky little artifact that kind of makes you feel like Microsoft is monitoring you or spying on you. If you've ever wanted to switch to Linux, now is a good time, because at the end of the segment, you might want to burn your Windows machine.
Yeah, when you were given those instructions earlier, I don't run Windows, so I couldn't follow along.
So one of the things that it does log is your application resources used. So every executable, every binary file that's run. In Windows 10, you have those awesome push notifications of updates available, or what you've downloaded, of messages. This is also stored in the database. It will effectively tell you what was going on your network activity, what binary was downloading the most. So the total packets, the total bytes, it gives you all that information. And if that wasn't enough, it actually logs which network devices you log onto or connect to. It will give you the type as well as the name, how long you were connected, when you were connected, and the total bytes that was transferred during that time. So it literally effectively monitors everything that you do on Windows. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the application resource tracking. One of the main things in forensics is user attribution. We want to know which user was actually responsible for it. Who's the one that pressed the button? Now, in Windows, every user is assigned a unique SID, and that is how we identify user attribution in forensics. Now, on a Windows system, any file that interacts with that specific user will reference that SID. And this is also tracked in the database. So not only can you tell what binary was run, I can tell which user was the one responsible for initiating it. So some of the process information that we look at is the CPU cycles. And from that, you can calculate exactly how long an application was open. It gives you the switches. It gives you the I/O bytes, the read written. And if you understand computer science, you will know that is how instruction is passed from memory to the operating system to do anything from opening files to reading registry keys, effectively everything on Windows. It will also then have a number of flashes where memory has been flushed or cleaned out. So if you look at that list, that's quite a lot of information that's contained in something that's supposed to just be a nice graphical user interface for the user to be able to run diagnostics on their system. What it does, however, not contain is any memory information. So no memory threads and handles, no cache information, and no kernel info. But that's not a big thing to worry about, because in forensics now we do live forensic images, so that's where you will get that. What is very important for me with SRAM is it's a very quick and dirty way to see what exactly was going on a system. It literally took me about 5 minutes to run the tool and about another 5-6 minutes to sort the data in Excel to understand what I was looking at. We have a running joke in our firm is, I'm going to ask you guys, what's the best forensic tool out there? Doug?
I didn't get what you asked.
I said, what is the best forensic tool out there?
Notepad.
Well, I just to sort it out, I would.
Oh wait, I got it. Strings.
Well, you can.
No, Excel.
Yeah, if you put it in Excel, you can put it all in columns, and then you could organize, or you could put it in a Notepad file and parse it.
Yeah,
yeah, but no, I like Excel because Excel is also the best vulnerability management report writing tool as well.
Well, that's what everybody used for auditing. So when we did audits, we always used Excel because you could sort these massive stacks of things in really quickly
and make pivot tables
and make everybody suffer.
It's true.
How were you never sad doing audits? Audits make me terribly sad. Makes me sad and
that's why I enjoyed doing them so much. I love the look on their faces.
Oh boy.
Oh no. So you're the one that walks into the firm and we go, oh no, it's him again.
Exactly. I love that feeling.
That's kind of like anywhere Doug goes, though.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Didn't you hear us say that when he walked in tonight?
No, yes, you should. Yeah, you didn't notice them all going,
here.
"Oh, he's here." Yeah, like, "Oh God."
All right. Sorry, Veronica.
That's right. We apologize. Yeah. No, I agree with you. Excel is an excellent way to do that, and you don't have to write code to do it.
And then if you look at the application history, so that's how your task manager looks. And if you click on app history, it will give you all your usage information. So effectively, everything that's running on the system. So what is very nice is you can even tell what processes or programs were uninstalled. So you can actually reconstruct a file system, even if there's no prefetch. For us to be able to determine what software was running, we can do that from SRAM. A fairly unknown or not well documented forensic artifact contains so much information, which I will show you guys a little later. I have a case study to show that. So this is your application resource columns that you get. You actually get the application name, you get the full path, the date which it was created, which user ID is responsible for that, especially when it comes to incident response, when we want to identify the origin of a compromised account. This could be very beneficial to see exactly where the exploit originated from or where the malicious binary actually started from. Which is very interesting. It also gives you exactly, the bytes used. And we all know that malware tend to run very hot on a system and take up resources. And it's fairly easy to identify those things. What's also very interesting is this is more for diagnostic purposes instead of specifically forensics, is you can actually tell how energy is used on the system and what the health is of the system. Okay, so here we have exactly how this database looks. It has your network data usage monitor, your push notifications, your application resource usage, your network connectivity, and your energy usage providers. Now, they are also assigned a GUID, or there's various ways. I don't know, how do the Americans say that? Because we say GUID.
I like your way better. We say GUID.
Yeah.
No, I like my way better too.
I'm going to say that from now on, especially since Paul says GUID.
Doug and I get in, you don't want to know, Veronica. We get into these debates. It's API, and it's a daemon. Anyway, Continue, Veronica.
Well, I'm very impressed. I must give Paul kudos. He said my company's name right, because we have been DFIRLABS, but it is DFIR Labs. So thank you for that, because I was a little bit concerned whether my poor company name is going to be bastardized tonight.
I think that's actually the first time I've said something correctly the first time on the show. So, I mean, we're breaking new ground here.
And then also those are your dynamic link library files in System 32 responsible for monitoring and watching and collecting this information. So, as you guys can see, there's a lot of information in this database that can help us. But except for that, if it wasn't bad enough that you can find that in a database, you can find the same information in registry, which is, of course, where my love affair really lies, because I think registry is better than sliced bread. because it's a very big hobby of mine when a pen tester tells me, oh, but I can get on the system and I can do anything. Well, yeah, escalate your privileges, because I can promise you there's a registry key you're going to flip and I'm going to find it. Because let's face it, registry is one of those things that records mostly everything. So under your software key is your SRAM information stored. So as I explained earlier, SRAM will write or commit to the database every 60 minutes. However, in between that 60 minutes, it will commit it to the temporary location within memory. So this means that effectively the whole time data is committed to either the registry or to the database. Now, this is located in Windows System 32, your SRU folder, and it's srudb.dat. It's an extensible storage engine, which is an ESE database used by Windows extensively. Those are the tables contained in it. There's your GUIDs, as I explained earlier. Very straightforward. Where it does become a little bit tricky is that when we pass the information out from the database, we need to be aware that the timestamps are in UTC. So it's not in local system time. And that's where I think with NTFS as well, it becomes a little bit tricky when we do timestamps, which is very important in forensics, is we need to know what is passed in UTC and what is in local computer time. Because a lot of forensic tools will try and convert it to the local system time that the forensic machine is set on. But with a lot of cross-border investigations, you're going to find that the time zones don't match. I had a friend in New Zealand tell me that they had a cell phone that they had to do where the local time zone was in Samoa time, but it was manually set to New Zealand time. So every file that the user interacted with was actually in New Zealand time versus the system time being in Samoan time. So it's important to know. That's when I discussed with you why it's important to understand why your tools pass information out and how they calculate it. It's this tricky bit where some tools will still pass it out in UTC, but they'll tell you that it's in local time. You need to actually go with the hex editor, sweep the bytes, check the NTFS journals, and see and calculate and decode the time yourself, just to make sure that you don't go stand in court and end up with egg on your face when you come against a defense expert that's done these checks. Your network interfaces, you guys will see there's a interface LUID or LUID. That is the network interface name. There's a couple of ways to do it. This is the long way that you can do it yourself, where you can actually parse it into a readable format. I did this, but I found that the tool that Matt did was far easier and user-friendly to use. The only thing, when I get to that, I'll explain to you guys, is a few potholes that you can step in that you should be aware of, because otherwise it's going to make you cry. And just for the record, I haven't slept in 12 hours, so I might start crying. And that's why I did a video, because I thought I'm not doing a live demo and everything goes wrong, because that's generally what happens with live demos.
Totally understandable. What time is it right now where you are?
12:30 in the morning,
yeah.
Or evening.
That's what I thought.
Morning, evening. So what now? Everyone's going to say, oh, but SRAM, so what does it help forensics? Well, we can do user process mapping. I can get network statistics. I can see what's been uploaded, downloaded per process. I can see what's been deleted, uninstalled. I can see what external programs have been run. And I can actually see for how long an application has been run. How many times in forensics have we not heard, oh, no, I accidentally clicked on the software and it downloaded a bunch of copyrighted stuff? Well, not if you've been running it for 24 hours. That does not seem accidental. So this helps with those situations where you need to prove that an application was actually run over an extensive period. Mm-hmm. And the nice thing is with prefetch, we can never really say how long a duration of a process is taken, because it literally will give you the first 8 times that file was run. everyone knows what prefetch is, right?
Yes.
No.
Okay. So it's a very nice piece of information, but unfortunately, anti-forensic tools have become smart. And this is the one place that they tend to clean up after themselves and make things very difficult for us. But now this is where SRAM is very nice, because there isn't really anti-forensic tools that clean it out, because not a lot of people are aware of it. Sure, some bright spark's going to go write an anti-forensic tool after this talk, which is fine. We'll just adjust, as always, with forensics. So here you can see how we calculate it. So we actually take the times that SRAM is run, you take the CPU cycle, and you can calculate exactly, approximately, how long it's run. It's very difficult to do it precisely, but an approximated time can already lend context to a situation. In forensics, we always say it's important to have a narrative. You have allegations or something that you suspect has happened, you need to prove a narrative. You need to tell a story with digital evidence as to exactly what happened on the system. So here you guys can see how the spreadsheet looks with the network usage, and you can actually see when it was created, the applications where it states none, it is an unknown application. So those should already start having red lights flicker to you. All the user SIDs and usernames have been changed to none. This is just to anonymize it as best as possible, because this is an actual case.
Veronica, if you could see us here in the studio, you'd laugh at all the old guys like getting closer to the screen and like squinting our eyes. Yeah, we're just old. You're fine. Keep going.
Yeah, I can try and make it bigger, but I'll try and talk you through it. So what you can see here is that it connected to a bunch of profiles, which is your network profile. I renamed these to evil and bad network. It'll also tell you the type of interface that it is. But except for that, if you look at it, you can see that he's been running uTorrent, he's been running Eris, he's been running OpenVPN. He's been committing, downloading data to his physical disk. He's using Microsoft Edge. And this is literally just a tenth of what the spreadsheet contains, because it will actually tell you the bytes downloaded, uploaded, and total. So you can actually sort it to see what was most extensively run according to the bytes and mostly downloaded on the system. You can sort it according to processes or profiles. Now, it's very important in forensics for us to know when someone's connected to a wireless or broadband network, especially when it comes to compromises or data exfiltration, because all of a sudden, if you see applications like Dropbox uploading a lot of information and you're suspecting that there's data being exfiltrated, you now know to go look for Dropbox artifacts. So this is a quick and dirty way to get an idea of what was really going on the system. Now, if you look here, I zoomed in for you guys so that all the gentlemen or females or people can see. It literally gives you a lot of information, exactly the path from where it was originating, and the user, because here we can see that it's Mr. X-Men, and he was actually running uTorrent and Eris and OpenVPN. So obviously now, if you see OpenVPN, you're going to know that really, like, you need to start looking at, you can't really associate an IP address. So you're not going to be really able to do attribution if it is a hacking case. So already there we know that he's been trying to hide his IP address. Then the application resource manager is quite interesting. You have the creation date when the application was run. And if we look here, we can see that this specific user was running Tor. I love it that people say Tor is anonymous. Well, unfortunately, it does leave some artifacts on your local machine that you run the VM from. So we're able already to see that he was using Tor. So I now know that I'm going to have to look for Tor artifacts. I'm going to have to adjust, readjust, and relook at how I do things. But surprise, surprise, he's also been running CC Cleaner. Now, CC Cleaner claims that they clean everything. Well, unfortunately, they don't clean the SRAM. So now I already know that if the evidence is not there, there's a reason for it. If my unallocated space is zeroed out, I can pretty much now conclusively say that he's run CC Cleaner on the 20th of August 2017 at the time UTC. Now, what is important here is if I'm in South Africa, I'm going to have to adjust that to local time because I can tell you people are going to want to know you're going to have to report on it according to your time zone. Except for that, we also see he's been running Verocrypt. So obviously now I know that I'm going to have to go look for encrypted volumes. So he's been hiding data. And again, he was using a VPN client. So already here, there's a lot of evidence to point us into what exactly was going on the system. I don't know what you guys think, but I think this is pretty awesome for a forensics person to be able to find all these things, you know, this fast.
It does two things right away. It's going to save you a lot of time because it points you at certain artifacts that you can go look for right off. And the other thing it does with the dates and times is it's going to let you start to pick at people who are lying, which is something
exactly.
I mean, that's one of the standard things that a lot of law enforcement people are trying to do because they have to do quick workups and they've got people they want to arrest. And the more you can poke at their story, if you can do these things quickly, which it looks like you can, you're pulling down a date and time and they say, I wasn't even at home that day. And you can pull it right down and go, yes, somebody was at home. Somebody was using the system.
But even think about incident response. What is important in incident response? We want to know a timeline.
Yep.
We want to know a pivot date. Well, you can do this within a matter of minutes. Pull through your SRAM, pull through that stuff, and automatically there you can do isolated imaging. You don't have to go image a whole server. You're going to know exactly when to go look at. Yep. You're going to be able to do that quickly and find the artifacts much faster. I mean, who in their right mind wants to go to, you know, petabytes of forensic imaging at a server farm? Good God, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, the worst I've had to do is like image 55 computers on scene. Thank God for Paladin. But I mean, I really don't want to go sit my whole life and wait for servers to image and then still have to process that image. Because I don't think people understand is when we do an image, it is a bit for bit copy of what's on that hard drive. So the new trend in forensics is we want to actually just do custom images. We just want to pull out the evidence that we need. And this is a quick and dirty way to do that because in incident response, you're going to know exactly where your problem lies. Mm-hmm. Then it's your network connections. It actually tells you for how long a certain specific connection was established to a network. Now, where we have situations where, for example, your computer's connected to a bad network, you can actually say approximately how long your computer or network was exposed to that network, which is very good to know. And you also know what the profile is for it. So it gives us a way to identify these devices very easily, especially if you think about someone connecting to a local, you know, router that they have so that they can exfiltrate evidence off of their machine. Now we have the machine and we can identify that person according to the profile name of his router.
Sorry, hold on, Doug. She can say router. You still have to say router.
Oh,
so don't pull that crap with me.
Now I'm going to say router all the time.
Damn it. Sorry, continue.
Router is, you know, I'm going to have this debate again because, you know, it's always like my American friends will say to me, speak American English. And I'm going to say to you, I speak British English. So it's water and it's router. It's not router or water.
There you go.
I thought you were going to say router was the woodworking tool and router was the network device.
So router appy demon.
You just can't say router in Australia, apparently. It is
interesting.
Very not appropriate, as I learned.
That's why I can't go back to Australia.
But that's not an on-air conversation that we should have.
Yeah, that's not the only reason.
Push notifications. So what is the one thing that Windows 10 has? It's got Cortana. It has push notifications because we want life easier. We want easy access to everything. Well, everyone's got desktop applications where they have chats. This is also noted. So it'll tell you immediately that this person was running Viber, when he was running it, the notification types, and whether there was file transferred. So you can see there's a payload size. So you can actually theoretically go map this back to artifacts within that chat database to see exactly what he received when he received it by the size and the identification number. So that already gives you an idea that you can actually say, you received this file via Skype, for example, that you sent to your friend or your friend at another company. You know, you actually exfiltrated evidence. It points us in the right direction that we can actually map a system out, which I think is pretty awesome. I had a holy shit moment when I started looking at this stuff, because for me, this is important. I probably will do this on every case on Windows 10 going forward. This will be the first thing that I do after I've dumped the memory. And this is, like I said, not very relevant for me. It is your energy usage, which is more for diagnostics. So just to put everything together, what we just found from SRAM, and this was like 1/10 of the information on the spreadsheet. I didn't want to bore you guys with every single thing that this person did, but we already found uTorrent and RS downloading. We can say which networks the person was connected to, the total bytes of downloads. We see he's using Tor, Ferrocrypt. We know CC Cleaner was run. We know OpenVPN was used. We know there's Skype, and we know there's Viber. So already, just right in the beginning of our investigation, we've effectively mapped out where we need to go find more evidence just to corroborate this. But even in terms of a timeline, you could build out exactly what the user did. And that for me was both scary and exhilarating, because this is a lot of information that Windows is monitoring. And I don't think the users are aware that this is being piped into a database that is being stored. And from research that I've done, I haven't seen that this information is overwritten or that there's a specific size that this database can get to. So I would like to actually further research this with more time to see how far back one can potentially go. Because unfortunately, with incident response, we don't know immediately when a person has been compromised. It's generally, according to SANS, over 200 days before an organization notices that they've actually been compromised. But the other thing is, in the absence of having memory, because it's so long after the fact, you have SRAM that allows you to reconstruct binary and executable behavior. So in the absence of memory, not all is lost, because we can still reconstruct it on an application and user level.
Veronica, are there other ways that Windows can track this information for like an application, how much data it's sent and how long it's been running? Does Windows write that anywhere else, or is SRAM really the place where it writes that?
I don't think, as far as I know, but I can be wrong because I am only human, even though I tell people I'm bionic. But as far as I know, there's no this level of detail on applications anywhere else. You have your event log applications, which will tell you what event was what application was launched and things like that. You can pull it from memory. So yes, there is ways to reconstruct it, but I don't think it is as neatly packaged and as complete as what SRAM is. I think this is probably because it's a diagnostics tool that's being run, and Windows wanting to know when things fail. You know that little report you send them when things go not responding, which is more often than not, fortunately. I think the main thing for Windows for me is I sometimes feel like a spinning circle, because that's all you seem to see when you launch an application. So I can understand that there's diagnostic applicability, but it would have been nice that this was disclosed and said, oh, so by the way, that little pretty thing that you look at for us to run diagnostics, we're actually storing all that information. Because I kind of felt violated when I looked at my SRAM. I kind of felt like I was being spied on, but I'm not saying Windows or Microsoft is spying on us at all. I'm just saying that's what it felt like at the point. But I have to also, the forensics person in me is going, holy shit. Why have we not been looking at this since Windows 8.1? Because I've only managed to find one academic paper citing this.
And Mark Baggett has written a tool on SRAM. Is this a newer tool, or?
No, this is the tool that I'm going to use, SRAM dump. Sorry, it wasn't Matt, it's Mark Baggett. He's a phenomenal instructor at SANS that actually teaches Python for forensics. So this is a Python-based tool. It's very easy. I'll show you guys now because I'm going to run a video to actually show you how it was done, and I'm going to talk you through it. One thing I want to say before we start, you have to unfortunately use a tool such as FTK Imager if you're working on a live system to pull out your SRAM database and software registry key. Reason being is these are Windows locked files, so as long as your machine is on and active, Windows won't give you access to it from command line. It won't give SRAM access to the files. So there's two ways of doing it. You can spin up FTK Imager Lite, but be aware that is going to write to memory, that is going to write to prefetch. It is going to leave a trail. If you use a USB to stick it in, you need to know that there's going to be mount points, there's going to be drive, assignments made. There's going to be evidence of that in registry. So always know with live forensics, we are going to step on the evidence. We just need to minimize what we step on. Because unfortunately, the way that things are going these days, dead box forensics is being phased out. We tend to want to do things while the machine's running, especially with your TPM chips or BIOS encryption or full disk encryption. We tend to want to keep them online. So then what I would suggest is if you want to do SRAM is to pull it out with FTK Imager Lite. That is a small single binary file, very small footprint. Pipe it out to your USB and then go run it on your forensics box. Alternatively, you can still do dead box, pull the plug, image the machine using Paladin or take the hard drives out or whatever form. It depends. In forensics, it depends on the circumstances, the hardware, the software that you're working with. If you have a forensic image, best case scenario is mount it up in FTK Imager as a file system, but non-writable, because we don't want to go change things. What you can do then with this tool is you can actually then query against it. A lot of the things that SANS teach you, you will do the forensic image mounted on your forensics machine and run queries with command line tools against it. I've cheated tonight. I actually copied it onto my machine into the SRAM dump folder, that everything's there, that I can run it faster. And I am known for mistyping things in code or in command line. I am the queen of that, syntax errors. So I wanted to minimize my screw ups tonight. So I'm going to start the video and then.
That's funny because Doug is the queen of that too. Just kind of.
Yeah.
Well, he's got competition on. I think I'm prettier.
Well, I don't know.
Doug is going to debate you on that one.
Hey.
Good Lord.
Okay, here we go. So the first thing that I did here was to navigate to.
Veronica, could you make the text bigger in your terminal window, please?
Okay, just hold on.
Thank you.
It is.
It's somewhere in there. I gave up on all that, and I just bought gunners that have 1x magnification, because I'm old.
No, it's not doing that. I am going to share a different screen. Stop share. I'm going to share the video. Why is it not showing that? You see, now there's technical errors here.
That's right. If you go back to the terminal window, that's fine.
It's actually not a terminal window. It is actually in the presentation itself.
Oh, okay.
Let's see if we can make it bigger.
Yeah, I mean, if I can read that from here on that screen, it's probably fine.
I can see it. Yeah.
Looks good to me.
Doug can see it too. He's like twice my age. So.
Yeah, I'm at least twice Paul's age.
Okay, well, let's start again now. You guys totally confused me.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, restart and let's do the demo. Go ahead.
Okay, so first thing that you do is you need to navigate. Well, you need to start your command prompt as administrator, otherwise it's not going to run. You then need to actually navigate to the folder that your SRAM dump executable is contained in. Pretty easy. Once you're there, you will run sdump. And this is where I made a mistake, I remember, but I thought I'd leave the mistakes in that you guys can see that I'm human and I make mistakes. SRAMDump.exe. Then it's going to say to you, okay, where's your database? Now, generally, the way that they give it to you is when you mount it, you will have the drive letter, Windows System 32, and that whole path. My path, like I said, I cheated tonight because I believe in doing things easier rather than harder. For that case. And once this is done, what this is going to do, this is then going to ingest it into the Python script. It will then ask you where you want to output it and what you want to name the file. You need to be very explicit here, because if you do not do this case sensitive, it's going to tell you that it's not going to work. It's going to give you a big old FU and it will stop working and you're going to have to start over. There's no backsies, takesy backsies, or try again. You start over when you screw it up. So once you have said where you want to pipe the information out, it is going to ask you for the template. Now you can actually go in and you can change what information you want out, or you can use the standard template. The next thing that you need to run this is your software registry key. As I explained, SRAM passes to two places, your ESE database and your software key. If you don't ingest the software, you will get no network activity. It'll give you everything else, but it's not going to give you any network interfaces or any network information for that matter. So to just take it, you need your database and you need your software. Those are the two main elements that you need. Then you press yes, and then you can see Mark Baggett is saying you should go do the SEC 573 for SANS. What it starts doing then, it actually is going to start creating your application resource usage first. It takes like about 5 minutes to run, I'm sorry. But it runs through everything. It is going to give you an error that it cannot create the Windows 10 sheet. That is a known error that they're busy working on. Also, what needs to be noted is if you do the CSV, it's going to start complaining because it's using a specific Python library script that doesn't allow for the files to get too big. So it will split them up for you. And then it's going to run. Then it should be done. There's the error that it says, oh, oops, I can't do the undocumented Windows 10 table, which is fine because we don't really need that. And then what I did is I wanted to show you guys just how the evidence looks before I actually worked with it. And that was basically, I'm going to go back and share my screen again. And this is this information that I pulled out. This is how it looks, how it's actually pulled out for you. So what I would suggest you do then is you do filtering. And you can filter according to specific paths, specific binaries, specific dates and times, usage. You can do analytics to your HOTS content, and you can actually find indicators of compromise or malicious binaries within this. I'm pretty sure that if you run this against an incident response case, you're going to be pretty quickly be able to tell exactly what was going on that system at the time. So for me, this has got potential and should be researched more. I will be researching it in the future. The idea is to run it against multiple incident response cases and see what else we can find that's of relevance. But even malware analysis, I intend fully to run it against my malware test cases to see if I can pick up the malicious activity the same way I would in memory. And that is basically all I have. Any questions?
Do you know how big that file can get? I know that ESE database can be like gargantuan, because on like AD servers and stuff, it can be like just massive. So it's got the potential to be really large, but I wondered if they're purging it somewhere, so it's just kind of it just stays there. It
seemingly stays there, but that's what I said earlier. I actually want to go research that more. I literally this is 2 days research.
Okay. Well, that's fine. That was the first thing I immediately started thinking about was how far back can I go? How big can the thing get? So is it a threat? So can I make it expand? Can I write junk to it so that can I filter I clean my I'm just thinking of all the things a defense attorney's going to say. Is there a way that I can push stuff in there that's just garbage so I can clean it out? So that's a great tool. I really like that. That's like awesome.
Well, I think what I want to do is I actually want to research and to see for actually how long it keeps evidence for. But as I said, I struggle to find information on the SRAM. There's really limited information out there. And even with Windows' technical papers, it doesn't really, it claims to be a diagnostic tool, but there's not much said in terms of how big the file can get. And ESE files is not like your event logs that Windows sets to 20 megs and then it purges and carries on. ESEs can be absolutely gigantic, especially with servers. So the potential is that you could probably go back very far, but that is something that is on the books for me to research once I hand in my master's thesis. Yes, my professor is watching, and he has threatened me with life and death if I touch this before my thesis is handed in before the end of the year.
But yeah, don't neglect that.
Veronica, we just have 5 silly questions to ask you. Are you ready to play 5 questions with Security Weekly?
Oh boy.
I don't know if I'll ever be ready because I think I'm way too sober, but let's go for this.
Alrighty, 3 words to describe yourself.
Limitless. Impossible. Annoying.
If you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
Ooh, so many choices though. A computer.
If you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be?
Beautifully broken, wonderfully flawed.
In the popular game of Ask Grabby Grabby, do you prefer to go first or second?
Is that grabbing first or being grabbed first? Because there's a difference, so you need to be explicit, yeah.
It depends if we're playing American rules or
South African
European
rules.
Or South African rules. Yeah, that's...
Well, I'm going to be nice. I'm going to say let's play American rules.
I don't know. Hold on. Wait. Wasn't I the one asking the questions? What happened?
So, Paul, which one are you going to
pick? Being grabbed. I guess. Yeah.
No, then I'm not going to want to go first. Because I'm going to want to grab first.
There you go.
There you go. Choose 2 celebrities to be your parents.
That's difficult. Oh, I'm going to get in trouble for this. My dad would be Jason Street. And my mom would be Heather Malik.
Very nice, very nice. Veronica, thank you so much for appearing on Paul's Security Weekly.
Thanks for having me.
And with that, we'll take a short break, come back with our next technical segment. Stay tuned.
NetSparker, the developers of desktop and cloud-based web application security scanners that enable you to automatically identify vulnerabilities in your web applications and web services. NetSparker scanners employ a unique and dead-accurate vulnerability scanning engine that automatically verifies vulnerabilities with their proof of concept. For more information, visit them on the web at netsparker.com or email at contact@netsparker.com. Signal Sciences secures the most important web applications, APIs, and microservices of the world's leading companies, protecting over 7,500 applications and 150 billion production requests per week. Signal Sciences Next-Gen WAF and RASP help companies increase security and maintain site reliability without sacrificing velocity, all at the lowest total cost of ownership. Signal Sciences' patented technology protects any application against any attack, with integrations into any DevOps toolchain. Signal Sciences, demand more from your WAF. Learn more at signalsciences.com/PSW.
Welcome back, everyone, to Ball Security Weekly. Join us for a webcast with Signal Sciences. The topic is going to be answer the question, which way should you shift testing in the SDLC? It's way more interesting maybe than the title sounds. I don't know. It's going to be a lot of fun. Like myself, Larry Pesci, and Zane Lackey. I mean, just if you think about those cast of characters, it's going to be a lot of fun.
I don't see how you could go wrong with that.
Right? I don't know. I think we got the title wrong.
Even if it has SDLC in the title.
Registrations are kind of low. I think it could be title related.
SDLC scares people. They run for the exits.
When I heard that Zane, Larry, and I were going to be on the webcast, we're talking about software security. I'm like, this is going to be all. I'm like excited. And apparently our audience, I don't know. It's just going to be fun.
Just a late 11 crowd.
Yeah, just tune in. I mean, if you got to deal with application security, which is many of us that work in security today, you should join.
Many of us who use applications.
So you're saying there's still great seats available.
Or if you have people that use applications in your environment, you should join. That's pretty much everyone.
I think. I think that's everyone now.
November 8th, 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. You still have time to register. Make sure you go to securityweekly.com/Signal Sciences. I would like to introduce our next guest, Yossi Sassi. He is on the advisory board at Javelin Networks. And I have to say, I don't know Yossi very well yet, but if I were trapped in a country and like I had lost my wallet and had no other way out and I needed help, Yossi would be the first person that I would call. And I guarantee you that I would get out unscathed. Yeah. So, Yossi, welcome to the show.
Hi, Paul. Welcome. Thanks, everybody. So basically, today we're going to talk about try catch. So this try catch, this cat and mouse stuff is something that I know and many of you probably know from pen testing, red teaming, adversary simulations, and the likes. And it's basically try catch because obviously in code you try, and if something goes wrong, then you go to the catched clause, and you try not to be catched, right?
Yeah, and so Yossi, I like this. When Yossi and I were chatting about, when I used to do pen testing and pen testers today, I'm like, I'd love to be able to cover my tracks, like delete logs and do stuff like that. I'm like, mostly that's not allowed. And Yossi's like, well, I do some tests where that is allowed. I'm like, you need to talk about that because that's awesome. So carry on, Yossi.
Cool. Yes. So definitely credit to Paul for the idea, because we were just, jamming with ideas, and this one came up. So I said, cool, why not? So let's throw some thoughts and notes from the field, from my experience as a pen tester. So like Paul said, I'm basically an AD protector. I've been with Active Directory since the early beta with NT5, and I'm also an Oriental rock buzu guitarist. I guess you didn't have that in the show.
That's very interesting.
Before.
I'm going to have to Google that.
Yeah. And I have my own small firm. I've been independent for like a decade now. My own security boutique firm that called Cyber Art with a T, not ARC. Although we do know the guys from Cyber Arc very well. Mm-hmm. And of course, with Javelin, we're doing really interesting stuff with protecting Active Directory, and basically a white hat, and working mainly with banks and government and military, but all kinds of customers. And I've been with music and computers for like 30 years each. So when you were Googling me, I understood, Paul, you didn't find any security blogs, but because all the first results are guitars and rock stages. And
yeah, I thought it was someone else. I'm like, oh, there must be another Yossi Sassi out there that's a musician, but it turns out it's the same person, which is awesome.
So that's the first stage in any attack is like the public recon, and I try to I use it very wisely. So all my public recon is fully scattered with this musician guy, whoever it is.
Right, that's awesome.
But basically, I'm in the shell. That's my hacker nickname, and just enjoying myself. So let's talk about the classic life cycle of a pen testing engagements, etc. So we all know about that, the different stages, recon, persistence, etc. But we hardly speak about the clearing of tracks and removal of evidence, and that's for a good reason, because that's basically something that the bad guys have to think about, right? Because when you're like when you join the forces of light, like I did, to earn much less and not in Bitcoin and to pay taxes, so you kind of give up on that in a stage, because in pen testing you normally not allowed to delete and your tracks, and even then, even if you were allowed, and some of my customers, especially military, they want me to try and cover my tracks because they want to learn from that. You have to be very careful, because basically, removing attack evidence from systems involves modifying and deleting, and that or stopping services, terminating processes, and that's what we'll be talking today about, this yin yang of attacker and defender when it comes to evade detection and cover tracks, which really go along together. And to add on that, we always say this stage is at the end, but it can easily be in the beginning, straight after the infiltration. You're beginning to do stuff, right, on your pivot machine, and from there, once you get into the organization, you're beginning to to touch stuff and to leave evidence behind, and your breadcrumbs, your digital breadcrumbs, are beginning to pile up. But interestingly enough, for most of the information, if not all of it, that you are leaving behind, the first time you'll be able to do something about it will be only later on, to add to the confusion, right? Whether it's Privesk as a local admin or domain admin, that's when you really can get into dealing with this stage. So it's kind of weird. It can happen in any stage, really, the covering of tracks. But that's mainly the big picture. So, like every big question, we have to ponder: to admin or not to admin? Because everybody's running after the privilege escalations, and everybody's speaking about and righteously about the privilege accounts, etc. But I argue for some time now, for several years, that security descriptors may matter in some cases, not always, more than the group memberships of privileged accounts. And I had this example every year. I have a couple, 3 of those. I had one from a very large bank that I did a work now a couple of months ago. That the first thing I had was when I had a domain admin user. To my surprise, I discovered that they have all kinds of deny ACLs and on the domain domain controllers OU, and they were using all kinds of things, just to make the life of a domain admin hard. It was like a sort of an experimental domain environment, and when I queried SPNs, etc., I found out some service accounts that I was much better off with them. They had really better permissions in action, that I could do with them better work than that domain admin account. And to add on that, if you're not totally convinced that it's not always best to go for the admin, but to go after the security descriptor. So there is a really cool talk from not a while ago by Will Schroeder, Harmjoy's Unintended Risk of Trusting AD, which you can, and it's really advised to look at and see some ideas that he spoke about there. So let's begin about the different things that you can do to evade detection, or do stuff, while your privilege is escalating. So there's a well-known attack called the DC Sync. or basically it's the get changes all right that you can do DS replication get changes and get changes all on the domain scope, on the configuration naming scope, and basically you request a domain controller to replicate AD objects. So it's a user, a normal account that grants it's granted a specific object access type of permission, and then you can just use get NC changes, RPC calls, and behave as if you were a DC asking to replicate with others. So the way that you can find users that do that, which really helps you solve a lot of lateral movements and actions of the likes. If you found those users really early, you can look for the DC sync write in Active Directory. Actually, every domain user can do that, this simple query, and you can possibly target those simple accounts. Normally, they will be all kinds of sync connectors, like a domain user, normal domain user with a specific write. You see it with the Azure, the AD Azure connector, SharePoint connectors, etc. Those accounts have that permission, so you can go for that low-hanging fruits. But you can also add this right to a regular user, whether an existing user or one that you create. So, but that to do that with this ACLs or the likes, that requires obviously a domain or enterprise admin or domain admin. So let's just see that really quickly in action. So basically here we have a script, all the scripts and all the code I'm demoing. I put it on my GitHub. So after the session, you'll have everything for you. So basically this is a straightforward PowerShell script that just goes, queries the domain naming context as well as the configuration naming context, and just looks for that specific object type access control list. And those two specific ones, the directory, replicate directory changes and replicate directory changes all, and just takes out this simple
Yossi,
report.
Hold on. This just is really bizarre. So to have the privilege of replicating a domain controller, I don't need any other type of authentication or authorization other than like my user role in the organization has been allowed to do that?
In order to find, in order to query access control list from AD objects, in order to find them, you don't need.
Oh, okay. To find them, you don't need. Yep. Okay.
Just to query. By default, Active Directory is a wonderful database that lets you. It has a huge amount of trust between the database of all those entities and all those juicy stuff and any endpoint. So any domain user really gets access to a plethora of anything you want.
So in this, I'm finding which users and or groups would have permission to initiate an Active Directory replication.
Right. That's what this script does, and just to know these groups and to begin to target them, you don't have to have any special permission, and then you can get just this simple report, and to see this just the specific users that you can go ahead and target later.
Gotcha.
If you want to add the right, that's where you need the permissions. So there you're right about the right. There you really need to escalate to a domain or enterprise admin in order to be able to grant this permission. So these first ones go for the domain, and the other ones go for the configuration naming context. So that's briefly about the DC sync method, and it's implemented in few scripts and few frameworks with PowerShell and others and Mimikatz. The limitation is that it's read-only, so you don't have any ability to modify or inject data to Active Directory itself. So, but you can, but it will be very hard without being detected, because this user allows you to read hashes, of any user, KERP-TGT, any domain admin, and you can obviously continue to pass the hash, etc. But those kind of attacks are quite noisy, and there's multiple tools and methods to to detect those.
Is there a record of the read-only query?
Of the read-only query, yes. Actually, if you turn on certain DS access type of events in auditing in group policy. So you can see somebody trying to exercise this right.
But that's not on by default.
No, that's certainly not on by default, and not on by the second and third and fourth default. Normally you will be,
it's true.
Yeah. Normally system admins, they will be turning on at least 10, 20 other things before that, including auditing of files of some finance report on a server, before they would think about DS access and LDAP object access rights. So that's nice to exercise, but once you want to do really juicy stuff with that, like pass the hash and stuff, that's when you begin to be noisy, and there are a bunch of tools to try and catch you on that. Let's move on to the next part, which is DC Shadow. So DC Shadow is basically the evolution of Mimikatz, the well-known work of Benjamin Delpy, and this time with Vincent Leton, I think, how you pronounce the name, I'm not sure. But they did something really great. They had the POC of reverse engineering the Azure sync tool to basically, they took the plugin in C# and reverse engineered it. And what they do is they simulate the behavior of a DC via RPC. So basically, you simulate a domain controller. You take a normal computer account, and when you think about it, a domain controller essentially is just a computer that hosts a service, right? And it has certain SPNs, service principal names. It has another thing or two that define it as a domain controller. So once you take care of those things, so you can have yourself a domain controller to behave equal among equals and do read-write stuff. And this, we've had all kinds of Active Directory abuse attacks for years now, but most of them were either offline, you had to get a copy of the NTDS DIT offline, or you had to do really quite a lot of effort. So the ROI on those attacks is not always worthwhile. But this attack, DC Shadow, allows you to do an online database modification of Active Directory with bypassing monitoring. Because what this allows you is you can push changes to Active Directory, actually create backdoors with permissions, SIDs, etc., without any logging, because we're writing directly with RPC calls that are intended only for domain controllers. So on the network level.
Yossi, if I understand this correctly, basically you can make a domain controller replicate its information to you and then impersonate another domain controller with the purpose of making changes to that and pushing it back to the real domain controller.
Right. Basically, you take a computer account, normal computer account, you add to it, you register it as a server replica, and you create what you need for the structure, the under configuration, container LDAP, and the DRS add entry. You add the SPNs, and then you just trigger the connection. And this is as simple as it sounds, because at the end of the day, a domain controller is just a computer object that, in terms of replication, right? Not in terms of authentication and other things. But in terms of replication, it's just a computer account that has specific things, a server replica. It has certain things in CN configuration, and a specific entry for DRS, and the required SPNs. That's about it. So you can replicate with others, read-write. And this opens up the world of, beautiful stuff. You can play with SID history without any logging, because, again, we're writing directly to the database with network calls that are intended only by domain controllers and replication partners. You can add, for example, enterprise admins group SID to a user using SID history. You can modify the anti-password history. So you can change a previous password without touching the current password and without changing the last password, the last time that you changed the password. You can play with time. You can make modifications to the when changed attribute. So basically, you can change objects in the past. You can say that this object was changed not today, but yesterday or a week. You can change the primary group of an object. For example, 519. So it will be the primary group would be enterprise admins, etc., etc. And you can also erase your traces because when we speak here about tracks and the things you leave behind, what you do leave behind with all these replication calls is the replication metadata and the replication partners and the USNs, the universal sequential number, etc. All this is registered, but you can actually erase those traces as well, because if you don't do that, it will come up with tools, like rep admin, stuff like that. I think maybe one of the coolest stuff you can do with that, and that's not recommended for people who are not. If you do it with a proper engagement with the customer, I wouldn't do that, of course. But it is for your lab fun. If you want to test it, you can turn off enhanced auditing altogether by setting the access control list of the admin SD holder object. And that's really not just bypassing and doing actions without any logging, but also removing the current policies and enhanced auditing that you have in Active Directory for other machines, for other places in the domain. So the DC Shadow is a really genuinely and quite genius attack, I think, in terms of the tools that we have to date. But the part that sucks is that it's not really the best tool that you would use in a proper engagement, because you should be very careful about that in production environments. If you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what objects you're touching. Some things are maybe harmless, when changed, stuff like that. But if you begin to mess with other things, you can get things, not to play correctly. And that you should be very careful about that. And if you're going to utilize that, I wouldn't suggest any automated framework or just the tools. I would suggest that very well the schema and Active Directory structure in general, and know what to do and what not. So DC Shadow, very cool, but not always useful for pen testing and the likes. Let's talk a bit about the event logs. Event logs is essentially the place where the events get logged. So that's a good place to look at when we speak about clearing tracks. In event logs, you have it locally, you have it remotely on other machines, etc. Your organizations collect logs, either by the forwarding or to syslog, other kinds of same systems. In event logs, you have a few options. Basically, let's start with a very simple option, which is to clear log. Obviously, this is not something you want to do at the customer site. And in general, clearing logs is, it's very clear that it happened. There is an event that the event log was cleared, and not a practical move. You can also stop the event log service. At the end of the day, it's just an SVC host. It's just a shared process that has, it hosts the threads of event log among some others. But this is also not cool because, firstly, most pen testing engagements won't let you do that. You're not allowed to stop that because you will harm other events that are trying to get written. And the second, if they allow you, and I was in more than one or two engagement that they allowed me to stop services, including the event log, that's easily detected. So I think if at all customers do anything about monitoring, is they monitor services, right? It's like the most basic after ping, after you check that the host is online, you check services. So they can easily see that it's stopped. So what about terminating just the event log threads? Meaning to open the thread, terminate it, and then close the handles. So basically, the service is running, the event log is working apparently properly, but nothing gets logged. So that's something you can easily do with kernel 32 calls, and that requires only local admin, so something that is relatively more easy to achieve than the domain admin. And simply by restarting the service, you will renew the logging. So that's also not too harmful and it's quite stable to do that, not too harmful on the environment. So let's just see that here for a second. So at the moment, if we look at this machine, so we can see we have, I'm looking at the partial operational event log, and we can see we have some recent events, and that's the last event is here from a few minutes ago. So let's do an action just to see that it's properly logged. For example, let's we can create a user or anything. Let's log on with a user. So that's the user in domain McDonald's. And once we log on with this user with a new process, so obviously we'll get the event, and you can see we have a new event. And once we refresh, so we see we have a new logon event, and oops, sorry, I'm not looking at the right event log, but we have the partial event as well. So we have, of course, in the security event log, we'll have the recent event, as you see, 1137. So that's the one we just created. There's a new logon assigned, the 4672, but before that we have the 46 with the new logon. So we see the user that's logged in, Mike. He created a new logon with the user Yossi. So that's fairly straightforward. What we will do is use a script called, well, you can do it in multiple ways. You can write the code in Python or whatever you want, but we'll be using a tool called Invoke Phantom, which is basically a partial script written by Khalil DZ. I'm not sure about his last name, so we'll stay with that.
Sounded good to me.
Yeah. So let me just see. We'll take one of those shells here, and we just run this in a minute. Let's see what we have here. So yeah, so we'll be terminating the thread for the event log. And once this runs, the invoke phantom, so it's enumerating threads, and obviously once it finds, it's looking, basically what it does, it's looking for the process ID of the SVC host that holds the process of the threads of the event viewer. And once it finds them, it just kills them by the PID. And now basically, if we look back at the event viewer, so this is the event viewer as we remembered it, and let's do any type of action. For example, let's redo the logging with a different user. The VMs are a bit, it's like a far machine, but they're a bit slow. Sorry about that, but hopefully it's enough for what we need. So should be something happening in a minute.
And Yossi, was this the technique we were talking about where you can mask your presence, but kind of like what you were talking about just earlier, where like there's no clear indication from a sysadmin or network security analytics perspective that someone's messed with logging, but you can kind of mask some of your behavior, right?
Yeah, that's. I will get to that in a minute. So
okay.
Anyway,
sorry, I was really excited about that. Obviously.
Yeah. You should be. You should be. It's very exciting. So basically, now the event log is not registering anything. Let's try and see why the shells are not working as well. But anyway, so we'll just continue with that. You'll have to believe me that it's totally working, but and that's really straightforward as well. So we'll just have to restart service. I'm not sure why it's not writing or responding, but we'll need it to. Oh, here we go. So something is happening, and so we'll just restart the event log because we'll need that for later. So, and we'll need the force because it's has dependencies. Sorry, and okay. Oh, it's not elevated. Okay, the chair is not elevated. Let's do it from here. Oh, here's the pop-up. Now you show it to me. Okay, so it was hiding somewhere there. But just for the sake of continuing with because I want to show you exactly what you just said, and for that we'll have to restart the service of the event log, and once we get that restarted, we can log events back on. So now we restarted the event log, and we continue with that. So basically, let's speak about what I told you before. So by the way, just to wrap up the thing about the event log, you can terminate the event log with threads, of course, and restart it, but Blue Team obviously can look out for anomalies, meaning if you're not writing any events, if they're not getting any events from that machine for a certain period of time, so they can get suspicious, you know. But that's the only cons that this method has. So let's move on to something a bit more original. For example, let's talk about protected event logging. Protected event logging is part of Microsoft's PowerShell Hearts the Blue Team. This is like so-called the Bible of PowerShell security mechanisms. It's a well-known MSDN paper document by Lee Holmes about PowerShell, and it really outlines amazing things there, because PowerShell, as you know, it's a CMD on steroids, and it can do invocations, obfuscation stuff, and can run code in memory without touching the disk. You can run PowerShell without PowerShell exe. It's really a beautiful tool. So there is an issue. Sometimes you can log PowerShell events with module logging, etc., and you can get in the event viewer all the actual commands that are ran by console and scripts. But the issue is sometimes the content that gets logged may contain sensitive data. For example, credentials may, you know, if you're not too careful about them, but even other things that seem more straightforward, like connection strings, even server names and some entities. In general, when you log PowerShell commands, you log not only the attacker, you log basically, most of the time you log yourself, the IT, right? But once the attacker gets to that machine, and when he later compromises that, he has all this log data, it can really be useful for reconnaissance. So the solution Microsoft offers, for now I'm talking just about the Blue Team solution, is to encrypt data that PowerShell writes event log using something called CMS. CMS, it stands for cryptographic message syntax. And this is basically asymmetric encryption, that you use a public key. It's just you flip on a registry key in the station. You can do it also with group policies, and you can from that moment on, all your PowerShell script content gets logged, but it gets logged encrypted with using the public key in the station. And later you can decrypt and analyze that when you forward them or move them to a centralized syslog, and then you can use the private key to decrypt and parse the events. It's an industry standard, IETF standard, fully compatible with OpenSSL. Beautiful thing. So that's really an advanced Blue Team technique that Microsoft offers. So, oh my God, what's happening? Live.
You've been ransomware live.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Ransomware, would you believe it? So, ransomware. So
that was awesome.
I've been thinking, you know, a while ago, I had some thoughts about this protected event logging, and I thought, you know, why not use the defense for offense? So I was thinking ransomware for event logs. So what I do in my engagements, I introduce the first moment I have a local admin that I can write this certificate and use it and to change that HKLM key. So I just create this certificate and I encrypt the logs. Only I encrypt them with my own certificate. So basically everything gets logged, everything is fine. The machine sends logs, forwards logs to the syslog, but they're all encrypted. And once they wake up, that'll be too late.
Right. Now, Yossi, if the organization is not encrypting logs, and then do you find that like all of a sudden they notice that logs are being generated and they are encrypted, and that in and of itself is an anomaly, or does it take them some time to figure out that the logs that are actually going to the event log are actually encrypted?
Yeah, from my experience, sadly, no customer noticed that, and that doesn't goes to say that they're not responsible customers. They're all enterprise customers and they know what they're doing. It's just that they don't necessarily parse those events in real time. So some events, they have, how SIM system works. They have their rules and playbooks and the triggers. So basically the classic SIM system is that you parse and analyze in real time user logons and permissions and stuff like that, but you don't parse partial logging. That's like something they collect for audit. Like if you have a breach, so later they will go and look at it. It's like a journal that you so once that, because they do it aftermath, they do it after the action. That's why it's so useful, this method. And to add on top of it, if you think about a real attacker now, not pen testing, even when they detect it, it's too late and it's useless, because without the private key, they won't be able to do anything with that data. So you can rest assured that everything you do is totally covered. And we can, if this machine behaves, we can see a quick demo of that. I'm not sure how we are on the times. I have a couple more slides, but
this is super interesting, so continue. Don't worry about the time.
Yeah. Okay, great. So let's just go back to the partial operational event log, which we were at before. This slow server is killing me. And okay. So on the partial operational log, that's where you get the partial events. You get them in other places, but that's where you see the actual execution. So most of the time you will want to look at events 4104, which is essentially the commands that get executed. And in those type of events, you're likely to find, if you run some codes, you're likely to find some interesting stuff. Let's do, just a second, I'll just close this. And so let's get rid of that. So basically, we can look at the event viewer also from here. And when we look at that's not that, but that's just for fun. That's my malware. It runs an encoded B64 command that runs a Mel Gibsonware. So basically, when we look at, keeps missing that. Should be one less. It's so slow. And that's okay. So basically, when we run that, so you see the entries from the event log. We're looking at the messages, so you see them as is, meaning that if now I run, for example, this script, which is basically it's an encoded command, a malware, so-called. It runs a Gibson malware, a Mel Gibsonware. So if you look at that, it's basically what I'm doing here is a sort of a basic obfuscation, right? It's just an encoded command, a base 64, that runs the actual command that gets executed. But that's the beauty about Microsoft's security mechanisms, that they allow you with module logging, they allow you to see the actual command that gets run. So if we'll clear all this and we'll look again at the event viewer, the partial event viewer about the commands that got run, so we'll see the actual command. So you can see here the deobfuscated command. That's what my encoded command was doing, right? So what we can do is we can enable partial protected event logging, and this happens with a partial script as well. It's basically a registry entry, and what it takes is it takes as an input the certificate thumbprint of a document encryption certificate, and we're just creating that under HK local machine software. And if we look at the certificate we're using, that's a certificate for document encryption, and so basically that's the one. And we just need the public key portion for that to work, because we encrypt. I remind you that we encrypt the event log with the public key. So as you see, this is the one that you need, and this will all be detailed in the resources at the end of the talk. And now when we go back to our PowerShell, and we will run the malware script again. So now it's running the malware, so-called malware. And when we look at the partial events, which will be on in a second. So when we look at the events, that's what we get. So basically, somewhere here is the commands that I ran. Good luck.
Yeah, and if you're doing pen testing today and you're like, this is a great idea, make sure you have permission, right? Because if you don't back out the change, right, Yossi, that you're talking about, if that machine does get infected with actual malware from
all
an
your
attacker,
logs are gone.
Yeah, all your logs are still going to be encrypted.
And you get something like that. You know?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so that's the idea behind using the defense technique for your offensive, and that's a pretty neat idea, and it works beautiful because blue team doesn't check it too often. It's not like logon events or something, you know, that people look at on a daily basis, and once they discover it, it's too late and they can do nothing about that.
Mm.
And there a lot of log parsing and log searching engines wouldn't find anything either because it's just encrypted, so it wouldn't see like key strings or anything like that.
Exactly. Most of the logging and parsing, even if they do check, that's a very good comment actually, because even if they do check, it will just come back empty results. Yep. So they will run regex or whatever, find strings, and they will see there's nothing suspicious about the last event.
Yep.
So that works beautifully on all fronts. Speaking about partial auditing and logging, Microsoft did some great stuff. You know, a set of capabilities, script block logging and module logging that we saw, and constraint language, transcriptions, etc. And this really dragged us as hackers and pen testers to the downgrade. If you want to continue to work with PowerShell, all the things, this juicy stuff from PowerShell, basically 5, forced us to downgrade to PowerShell 2. PowerShell 2 kind of evades all these unique capabilities that PowerShell created since PowerShell 4 plus some KB articles, and basically PowerShell 5 and above. So you either have to downgrade to PowerShell version 2, which is not too bad. It's very similar in terms of functionality, and most of the scripts will run just fine. Or you can move to some other tools, Python or writenative.net, because these auditing and logging capabilities are so good that not to mention what I just showed you now, that they really can make you ponder if you want to continue to use PowerShell as a vector, as an attack tool in post-exploitation. And PowerShell indeed is a very worthy post-exploitation tool. But then came our team in Javelin, and this is a fresh research that we did, led by Omer Yair and the team, Guy Franco, Eyal Neemani, and Ephraim Nurbeger. And we created InvisiShell, which I know that Omer spoke to you about that. Basically, it's our latest research that was also featured in last DerbyCon, shows how we bypass all of that, everything I just spoke briefly about, including AMSI, including the anti-malware service interface. And I urge you to, the piece of code that we released to GitHub, forked on my GitHub and in Omer's, I really encourage you to see the DerbyCon talk, or even here on one of the latest episodes on Security Weekly spoke about that and demonstrated the tool. And that's a really cool research we've been excited about. We shared the findings with Microsoft. One piece of the code we are able to share on GitHub, and it works nice. Some other piece of the code really has implications that we prefer to get the green light from Microsoft before sharing that code. So that's I encourage you to continue to follow Omer on Twitter and continue to follow that GitHub and see how it gets even more exciting. Finally, I don't know if we'll go into showing all this, but basically, you have to clean up. You have to clean up after yourself, right? You are basically, when you're doing stuff on a machine, whether it's through a shell, a console, or locally, interactively, opening through MSTSC sessions, running processes, etc. All this gets recorded in multiple places, not only registry, of course in registry, but also in prefetch and other environments. I created a script for you because of the poor performance of the remote VMs. I'm not sure I will demonstrate all of it, but like I promised, all of the code, everything you see and now is already published on my GitHub. So you can access it. That's pretty much here a set of, querying for profiles and terminal services. You can actually see, for example, these are all registry-based, but then you get to prefetch, and you can see which applications ran on this machine and at what times, etc. Even if you removed the executable or application, it's still recorded in the prefetch. So there's a bunch of stuff here to check for prefetch and also to use prefetch analyzing. So you can have really fun stuff with that and play with that later. And this will help you about cleaning most of the stuff, not all of it, of course, because there's a bunch of other places that you leave your traces behind. Essentially, to be very thorough with your digital footprints, to be 100% evasive is a very hard job. And that's why most PTs don't do it, not only because they're not allowed, but because it really takes a lot of time, field time on the engagements, because to come back to all the systems you were and delete everything from shim cache and stuff like that. I will show you just one more thing, which is the automatic destinations. Not sure how many know that, but this type of file, which is totally unreadable, it's automatically collected every time you do something, open a document, run a program. So basically, these are not readable on the normal tools, but if you use a reader, a structured storage viewer, and you open those files, so you can actually see things that happened in that machine in various moments in time, and it logs everything you do. Like, I downloaded some DSC resource zip file here, that you can see, and you can see to which folder it was downloaded. And here maybe we'll find some other things. So yeah, I don't know what I did here, but anyway, as you understand, there's a lot of places to clean up after yourself. So some things to keep in mind about persistence, because we're talking about covering tracks, evading detection, etc. So detection goes very well with persistence. And really the thing is that anything that can be related or traced back to a process, service, WMI subscription, events, registry key, etc., all this can be either detected or terminated, right? Depending on whether you're an attacker and you don't want to be detected, or whether you're actually a process or a service or whatever that has some persistence on the machine that is of the blue team, some sort of EPP or EDR or any kind of defense mechanism. Because all those defense mechanisms, most of them at least, by default, they have a sort of persistence, an agent or a client side. So it's fairly straightforward to understand how they work and to knock them off, either by loading a driver in memory and killing them, or by simply just elevating to system and taking them off, or whatever it takes. So all the known defense tools, there are known ways to knock them out, right? Everything, port knocks, traps, whatever. So we took a different approach in Javelin, which is worth mentioning in few words. In our product, AD Protect, like I said, I'm an AD protector, a proud AD protector. We took the approach of an in-memory dissolvable agent. And what this means is basically we use injections, rope injections in user mode to inject in our deception, our obfuscated objects. So we use that on the client side and we inject that through the network. We are basically behaving like an attacker. So we're using the other way around than I showed you. Just now I showed you protected event logging, that I use defense techniques as an attacker for offensive. And what we do in Javelin, we use offensive techniques for defense. And this way, where we're just somewhere, in the stack or somewhere in memory, good luck finding us. And even if you want to try and kill us where we're hiding, you just have to blue screen the machine, and then you're cutting off the tree or you're climbed at. So that really makes our detection and of course to stop the defense that we do, the deception, is really challenging because we don't have persistence. So that's about that. And as a side note, we also have in AD Protect as a totally built-in and integrated section that does a sort of a security assessment for your domain, and it detects the stuff that we saw now, the current the DC sync users when they're added, etc. Among another list of vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, from the basic stuff, like SMB1 and group policy, C password in XML files, and up to really more advanced attacks and techniques used up to date in the most recent findings and research around Active Directory security. So finally, we had a try catch, and finally, some final thoughts. Just think about security descriptors differently. They may go further in some occasions than group membership of privileged accounts. Of course, that doesn't mean that going after the privileged accounts is something of the past, but I think moving forward, we'll see that taking more and more place. And basically, just remember the yin-yang of life, right? Everything, it's all about the yin-yang. So you can defend as an attacker, you can attack as a defender, and just don't be, too locked and biased about the stuff as they seem. Always try to attack from different angles and try to surprise yourself and later the customer. Because we will do anything to catch the flag, and we have a good record of catching flags without getting detected. So So that's about it. I have all the references and resources sorted out here. Definitely encourage you. We spoke about the blue team, protected event logging. You'll find the scripts there, but definitely encourage you to look at Omer, Yair, and team, our work about bypassing all partial security features. That's really exciting things that's going on right now, and that's about it.
That's awesome, Yossi. Thank you so much. I think it really kind of was unique because we don't, as pen testers, right? Like I said at the top of the segment, we don't get the opportunity to do some of this stuff. So to see it in practice and also look at ways to detect it is really awesome. Yossi, I just have 5 final questions for you.
Sure.
Are you ready to play 5 questions with Security Weekly?
Yes, I do.
Alrighty, 3 words to describe yourself.
AD protector, guitarist, father.
If you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
My hands.
I think that evil laugh would have done it for me, actually. If you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be?
If I had to, sorry?
If you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be?
I think Gone Baby Gone.
In the popular game of Ask Grabby Grabby, do you prefer to go first or second?
I'm not familiar with that game. Grabby Grabby? That sounds like something that has to do with the talk you had before I came in. But I'd rather be grabbed, I guess.
I think that means you go first, although it depends if it's American or European rules, but in any case. Yossi, choose 2 celebrities to be your parents.
Well, I think if I want a really awkward childhood, then maybe Johnny Depp and Marilyn Monroe.
Oh my God.
But seriously, maybe I think about Mercedes Sosa and Joe Satriani.
Very nice. Yossi, thank you so much for appearing on Paul's Security Weekly.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Paul, and everybody, and all the team, Johnny, everybody that helped to prep the call. And thanks so much for having me.
And with that, we will take a short break, come back, talk about the security news for this week. Stay tuned.
Endgame's converged endpoint security platform is transforming security programs, their people, processes, and technology with the most powerful endpoint protection and simplest user experience, ensuring analysts of any skill level can stop targeted attacks before information theft. Endgame unifies prevention, detection, and threat hunting to stop known and unknown attacker behaviors at scale with a single agent. For more information, visit endgame.com. Today's determined attackers easily bypass even the most advanced network defenses. Trying to ramp up staff to detect their backdoors can cost thousands of dollars and take months, even years. With Active Countermeasures AI Hunter, we enable junior analysts to detect even the most advanced backdoors in a matter of hours. Sign up for a demo and purchase our product today by visiting activecountermeasures.com/PSW. Active Countermeasures. Make every analyst a hunter.
Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. I'm here in studio. All of our, except not Kevin joined, thankfully. So we have a remote co-host. Not Kevin's here. Welcome, not Kevin.
Thank you. So it's important that someone represents large windows in the for
That's true. Large windows and WAF. Kevin is our expert. Patrick, you had a couple of announcements. You're giving a talk.
Yeah.
Besides Connecticut.
Yeah, I can't wait. That's going to be on November 3rd at Fairfield University down in Fairfield, Connecticut. On November 3rd, I think great seats are still available if anybody wants to go to B-Sides Connecticut. So myself and one of my colleagues at Rapid 7, Aaron Herndon, are going to be giving one of those talks about fun pen tester tricks, tips, stories, defenses, all that kind of fun stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah, and can I also mention one other conference?
Yes, you can.
There's also version 2 of the Layer 8 conference coming. We did this last year. This was all about social engineering, information gathering, and it was a huge success last year. So we're going to do it again, and we are doing that June 8th at the Rhode Island Convention Center in Providence.
Oh, wow. That's a totally... When was it this year? It wasn't as early as June, was it?
Yeah, it was.
Was it?
Yeah.
That was June?
Like June 16th
Seems like yesterday.
or something.
Okay.
It sure does, yeah.
But you're not in Newport anymore.
We're not, no.
Newport was beautiful, by the way.
And Salve Regina is an incredible...
Awesome.
Yeah. It's great there.
But now you're at the... So you did find a home in Providence for the conference, the Westin.
The Rhode Island Convention Center.
Oh, the Rhode Island Convention Center.
Yeah, we're actually in the convention center itself.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, we're moving on.
Hence your need for sponsors, because that space is a little pricey, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I hear you.
We are getting bigger and better. So if you want to sponsor Layer 8 conference, let me know.
Yeah, if you work for a security vendor and want to sponsor a conference in Rhode Island,
we will help get the word out.
Yeah, contact Patrick. Yeah,
yep, and tickets are available as well.
So already on sale.
Already on sale and already going like hotcakes.
I love it.
Well ahead of last year's pace. It's
that's good.
Looking great.
We need to have security conferences in Rhode Island.
It's a great location. I mean, we used to teach forensics classes here just because people came from everywhere from New York City all the way up to Maine, and it's like right in the middle, and the trains all run here, and you can, in fact, you can walk off the train to the convention center.
Yeah, you sure can. Yeah, imagine if we ever had a B-Sides in Rhode Island.
Yeah. We did.
Oh, wait.
We did once.
Yeah, we did.
Patrick and I actually organized that. Well, Patrick did most of the organizing. I kind of was just like, I'll just dip into my Rolodex and ask people to speak, and hopefully that goes well.
Yeah, and that was like a who's who kind of conference.
Yeah. We should maybe do that again. I don't know. Organizing conferences is not our strong suit at Security Weekly.
Yeah,
we leave that to you, Patrick. That's basically what. We'll help you any way we can, but we just don't want to organize.
Okay, we'll just call it Security Weekly Conference.
You don't have to do that. I mean, we'll just help. I just like to see conferences in Rhode Island because then we don't have to travel to go to a conference. It's great.
Yeah, there's that too.
Well, I think I know of one coming up in June 8th.
June 8th.
Yes.
That's awesome.
We'll go with that.
And the same number of track. Was there 2 tracks?
There were 2 tracks.
There was 2 tracks. So you're going to stick with 2 tracks.
We are.
Okay.
Yep. 1 day, 2 tracks. Fill it up.
Awesome.
Yep. It's going to be great. Yeah, we have a content committee that's going to worry about that. So my hands are off of that now.
And are you going to do the anonymous speaker submissions?
I don't know how they're going to do it. They're actually discussing amongst themselves right now. Probably not anonymous.
Okay.
So
I know DerbyCon was anonymous.
Okay.
500 submissions, 123 were accepted, and the review board didn't know who was submitting.
As you grow up, that's called double blind.
Yes.
And once you get into that, that's actually peer review. So that's how research becomes like actual research and not just a bunch of people hanging around. So it's peer reviewed.
Oh, so like peer review in the academic sense, they don't know that it's Doug White, PhD, that's submitting
and you don't know who the reviewers are, and they don't know who you are or what institution you came from, because the problem is that when you get somebody who's famous or you get somebody who's powerful,
or people that know each other, I mean, they
know each other,
right,
and you basically. I mean, usually you can tell who wrote the paper because,
This is true. There is, if you're in the same circle, especially even a subsection of security, like if you're in forensics,
right,
and someone submits a talk,
who wrote this because that's their thing.
Yeah.
But that's how you validate research, because otherwise there's a lot of biases in there. And then there's the flip side of it. That guy hates me because I rejected his paper 7 years ago, and I said he was an idiot, and now nothing I ever submit, and now he just happens to be the editor of Forensics Daily, and every time I send something in, he shoots it down because he hates my guts, and it doesn't matter if it's totally legit or not, it's going to be shot down, and so that's why they do double-blind reviews.
Well, but at the same time, there can also be biases even when it's completely anonymous as well, and that's one of the things that I've been kind of working with, like, Paul and I've been doing conferences since 2013, and always some years it's been anonymous where we didn't know anything. We just saw the title and the description, and then other times we're trying to more figure out, like, is this a speaker that we want to get?
Yeah.
Put all the information kind of together, because I think sometimes, depending on who is actually doing the deciding, some biases can kind of...
But speakers have to be separate from research.
Yeah.
So if somebody's coming to present research, that should be double-blind reviewed. A speaker is somebody you bring in because of who they are or where they're from, and you say, here's this person.
To speak, so I'm on the advisory board for InfoSec World, and I really like the way they do it because we do know who the speakers are. However, there's a not only it's sent to all of the advisory board members, right, and we vote yes, no, or maybe or whatever, but then we get back together and have very lengthy conversations about, is this beneficial to the audience if this person was to tweak it in this sense, or can we go back to this person and ask them for more information, because on the surface this seems interesting, but that wasn't enough to really make a final decision. So you can make your final tweaks when you're not doing the double-blind thing, and I think end up with a conference.
Typically,
it's all about benefiting the audience and the community.
You often do both. So what you normally do is there's either an editor or a track chair, and the track chair or a committee of people reviews the stuff after it's been double-blind reviewed. So peers are reviewing the research to say this is legitimate and valid. It's not just some crackpot nonsense. It was done in a reasonable way, and therefore it's legit. Then it goes to the track chair or the committee, and then they look at it, and they don't double-blind review it. They look at it and go, well, we're going to choose this person who is this Nobel Prize winner over this other person because it's a Nobel Prize winner and we want them to speak.
Sure.
Both are valid, but we have to pick one or the other. And so now we can decide what best benefits our audience, what best benefits our conference. And that way you have the legitimacy of research and you get to do what's best for your conference. So
yeah, and for that reason, that's one of the things I was thinking of when I put together the content committee. Because, for example, we have a university professor. So she's going to be able to read, like you said, the research and see what's absolute garbage and what kind of makes sense. And then we also have Whitney Maxwell, who won the social engineering capture the flag competition. So she has a pretty good idea of what phishing looks like and those sorts of things. And we have others on the committee that are awesome at phishing and physical social engineering. So I thought it was kind of a good mix of the group that should be pretty good for this.
Awesome. Looking forward to it, as always, Patrick. So in the news... there's a couple of interesting ones that I wanted to talk about more of on a discussion basis. I want to start with my story number 7, that few employers have a culture that supports cybersecurity. Now, when you read the article, it's based on a survey, and it's kind of, I think, kind of bullshitty, conclusions that they're drawing based on their survey. Now, they did poll 4,800 businesses, and if they got 4,800 responses, that's a good amount of responses, don't get me wrong. It also depends on how you ask the questions, and, is there, issues with the way you ask the questions that would lean people into one direction or the other, how much people are validating the answers to those questions. And when you're asking about security culture, like what's your hard data to support whether or not you've got security in your culture or you don't. Like, that's a really hard thing to measure. But I look at it as from a security perspective, when you look at the security posture of an organization, I think culture very much is a huge factor into determining whether a company even has the capability to be, air quotes, secure or not. Having said all that, it's an important measurement. It's difficult to measure, but I think it's important to speak to, hey, we want to be secure as a company, so therefore we're going to build a culture. What is culture? How do you build culture? How effective are we at building culture? And then how do we measure internally how we're doing at building culture? Like, how do you test that, right? It brings up a lot of issues. But issues aside, it's an important factor to consider. It's more of a feeling than it is something that like you can concretely measure. But
well, the article does point out one area that seems pretty interesting about how they kind of feel as though they have the culture built. Seems to be where they said 92% of the respondents said C-level leaders have and share an excellent understanding of underlying cybersecurity issues. So it seems like they're really saying that this whole culture is going to be starting at the top.
And it does, absolutely. In any organization, any type of culture, the culture you want to define security or not, whatever it has to be embraced by the leadership and driven really by the leadership.
I mean, if nothing else, they're determining the budgets. But if your upper management are saying we have to do this because there's a requirement, so check all these boxes and we're good. You'll never see any kind of cultural development of it. It's just, okay, that's their attitude as we get through it as quick as possible. Who cares what the impact is? As long as we check all the boxes, we're good. But if the management says we're embracing this is what we have to do, people are not going to be valued here that don't embrace this culture, then you will have a culture of whatever it is. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think spending is a big factor on culture. If you have leadership that is trying to build security culture, they will be more likely to approve budget to help achieve their goals and build a security culture. That doesn't mean that building a security culture necessarily should cost money.
Nope.
Right? Like there's a lot of things you can do to have a good security culture that don't necessarily mean you're going to go out and buy 20, 40 different security products, right? It also doesn't mean that to build a security culture, we're going to send our users an email 3 to 4 times a week and tell them about every single thing security related, because they're going to, we talked about that in Business Security Weekly. I kind of want to get the panel's opinion on that, right? When you're trying to make security changes and impart a culture on the organization, over communicating is equally as bad, in my opinion, as under communicating.
Actions speak louder than words.
And so just to say, like, hey, every alert we're going to get in, we're just going to keep reinforcing. There's a phishing attack, and we want people to do this and do this and do this and do this. And what happens is people just tune it out when it's over communicated, and they're like, that's annoying, and that can negatively influence your culture you're trying to build around security.
Well, an example I would use for this that I've seen is the example of harassment and hostile workplace. This is a totally different thing, but it's the same idea. I saw companies where they make you do all this stuff. So you have to take these little online video trainings and things, and they show you this thing where it's like, you shouldn't do this and you should do that. And here's a scenario. And in this scenario, what would you choose, and blah, blah, blah. But the upper management or your boss was still harassing and doing hostile workplace and telling racist jokes at the board meeting. And everybody goes, yeah, you fill out the form and you sign the box and say, yes, I've been trained. And then you go back to doing exactly what you were doing before.
That's not building culture. That's just making people take a test.
Right. It's like we have to check a box. And until you do that, I mean, the psych literature and the management literature have beat on this horse for years and years and years and years. And there's tons and tons of like academic research on changing organizational culture, organizational design for culture, and all these kind of things. That's really been researched a lot. And I think the cybersecurity community needs to reach out now and start pulling. I mean, this is what happened with the early like IT community. They had to finally reach back into the psych literature and start pulling all that stuff in and just changing the words to say, well, this is how you change culture of cybersecurity. And it's really just the same thing we've been doing since they started studying this stuff back in the 50s. And that's...
Well, I think that security culture in itself may be almost like an obsolete thing, right? Like you want to build a positive culture for your company. And that means that your employees are behind your company mission 100%. Security is part of that, in that, like, I don't want to succumb to a phishing attack because I care about it could potentially impact the mission of the company, right? So I think it's a more encompassing kind of philosophical thing, but it's misconstrued, as you pointed out, Doug. Like, we're going to have a security culture. Therefore, we're just going to, every employee, once a month is going to take this test and it's going to be reported and blah, blah, blah.
Every
right?
employee is going to care about security now.
And they're going to get a free T-shirt if they, identify a phishing attack or something like that.
Or even just literally every month you have to sign this statement of your commitment to security.
Yeah.
And, like, I used to go on about this because there was this big initiative by universities to pass these codes of honor. And I was like, really, guys? I mean, I worked, it wasn't where I work now, but I worked for another institution. They spent a lot of money on putting up all these plaques on the wall and all these things. The students had to sign these codes and the faculty had to sign these codes. And I was like, guys, if I'm unethical and I cheat, I'll sign the code.
Right.
It doesn't make me better. It just means I signed it. But they're like, everyone must sign this, or everyone now sign it. And as soon as you signed it, it was like, you don't have to, because if you wouldn't sign it, you had to go to training. Yeah. And if you don't want to go to the training, which none of us did, you just signed it. And that was it. And now we're going to spend $50,000 to put up all these plaques on the wall that say, we have a code of excellence, a code of honor and behavior. It didn't stop one incidence of cheating. It didn't change one thing at all. It was all just about, now we can tell everybody, we are excellent and we have a code of honor. And that was all they wanted, was that little seal they could stick on stuff and go, code of honor enforced. But they had no way to enforce it. And people were cheating like crazy. They were still cheating like crazy. The cheaters just signed a form and went, yeah, good. I would never cheat. No way, man.
We have 100% compliance.
And that was and that was exactly what it said. 100% compliance.
Yeah, that's
right.
Bad. 100% compliant, but not secure.
Well, it was just compliance with signing the form.
Yeah.
The security's the same way. Like, we have 100% of our employees have agreed, that they signed this form and they took this training. We are excellent. Out. I'm done. We are secure.
The conversation could go to more of what we talk about in Business Security Weekly. Yeah. So I just wanted to I mean, so I will say that culture is in your example, Doug. Right? We would try and build a culture that would why would people want to cheat and understand why they would want to cheat. Have the screening process that the students and the faculty we have in our organization aren't going to lead to a situation where someone would want or need to cheat, right? If someone needs to cheat.
And don't have people getting arrested for fraud. And, it's like upper management, like, we're committed to excellence and management ethics, and we're going to have ethics training weekly, and everyone will sign a statement of ethics. And then, it's like, oh, yeah, CEO arrested for, embezzlement and fraud and sexual harassment and on and on and on.
And, I'd rather have it where the faculty are leading student groups that are furthering their interest, working more closely with students, spending more time with students so that they don't feel the need to cheat, right? Reinforcing values, but also arming them with the tools and leadership so that you have more values in your culture and things like that is way more important. So the other thing was interesting was most security professionals fear AI attacks.
I fear them every day.
And I think, Kevin, if we had some AI, some machine learning, and some zero trust networking, in addition, that was all rolled up into our WAF, all our problems go away, right? At that point.
Or an
Absolutely. It's next generation. It's actually next generation at that point. Maybe even a third next. It's
Generation 3.0.
Oh, no, you change it. Make it 3 next or next 3, next cubed.
Ooh,
marketing,
nice.
next cubed. Well, patented right here. Trademark.
Someone trademark that immediately and get the domain name. Well, we still can.
I'm on it.
I was very confused by this article because I don't exactly know what it's trying to tell me.
Yeah, what does that graphic mean in this article, Kevin? Can you explain it to me? I mean, there's some green, there's some blue, there's like a moderate amount of purple.
It looks like it's cut off.
Yeah, and a very small amount of red. It does look like it's cut off. I don't know if that equals 100%, but there's a lot of colors and a lot of things in the graphic that greatly confuse me.
But as far as AI attacks, have you seen like the Boston Dynamics robots things? Where they got like the guy that can walk through fields and dogs that can go up and down stairs?
They can do parkour now.
Yeah, it's no wonder why this thing is scary.
Right. Sorry, Kevin. Yeah. Hold on, Kevin.
No, I'm still just trying to wrap my head around what this actually means, because half this article is describing why people like AI, air quoting, as in their defense,
right?
Which is good. I guess we're just talking about machine learning.
No, AI and machine learning are different, which most people get wrong.
But we That's entirely fair. The way the AI is used within security and language is really just machine learning. We have no true AI. That doesn't exist.
Kevin's absolutely accurate. That most oftentimes it's machine learning that's being branded as AI because they don't tend to differentiate between the two, and that's the use case that it most often happens is we have some machine learning, but it sounds really sexy to call it artificial intelligence and AI, and so we can say we have both. We have machine learning and AI, but it's really just machine learning. Sorry, Kevin, carry on.
But so there's definitely, and I think we've all seen that there's a good adoption of machine learning. It's actually done a really good job to solve the problems it was designed for.
Yep, that's the sad part. Yeah,
but the fear of this, I'm very confused about.
Well, I think the article is just very poorly put together.
I agree. I put articles in there like that on purpose.
But I mean, they act like they're talking. Like here's a graphic that says cyber attack fears and adoption of IPv6 protocol. Now, there's nothing. I mean, if you actually read the article, there's not like a correlation between those things or any kind of comparison between those things. It's just the way they put the article together. They ask people questions, and they're reporting the answers, but they make it appear like there's some kind of relationship between these things. But there isn't, and they don't even say there is. They just say, yes, on this graphic, we have two things that are completely unrelated, but we put an and in between them to make it cooler sounding. Because when I first saw that graphic, I went, what the hell? So they're saying that people that are afraid of AI cyber attack, denial of service attacks are adopting IPv6 as a defensive mechanism. I was like, wait, what? And then I looked at it, and I think they just put the graphic together like that, and it like if you look at the data, it just says other key findings. Yeah, so I think they just ask a question like, have you adopted IPv6? And then they're reporting it.
Yep.
And are you afraid of cyber attacks? Yes. Let's put that on the same graphic and put an and between them.
It's weird, like DDoS was most likely to be perceived as an increasing threat to organizations, followed by, well, social engineering, email, and generalized phishing. How does that help? I don't understand.
I think somebody took a study, they didn't understand it, and they were said, summarize this and get it on the web right now. Go.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, too, Kevin, that we started on was the article was kind of titled as security professionals are scared of AI because if attackers use AI, attackers can be more effective. Like, what does that even mean?
In fact, I think it's somebody they're reading somebody else's study. So it's just like, it was like, boys, we need 12 column inches, get it out today. And we've got to have it in 5 minutes. And I don't know what to look at. Read this thing, go. And the kid was like, I majored in creative writing, sir. And they're like, yes, that's right, 12 column inches, so you know what I mean.
If you want to go real deep on this, it's possible that someone didn't write this. This is actually
yes.
There's the real fear of AI, right? Yeah. This content we're reading we think was actually written by a person, but it's actually just an amalgamation of a program taking content out of a study. Which could explain why this doesn't make sense.
I'm scared of AI because of the science fiction movies that I've watched, Ex Machina being one of them, certainly. And if you see that movie, you've got very vivid visual representations of artificial intelligence that can harm you. The Matrix, I mean, science fiction movies in general, right, kind of prey on that fear of what if computers get really intelligent and start attacking the human race, right?
Which they would.
And so, but when you ask those questions about how AI can impact your fears or emotions about attackers going after your network, I think, maybe I'm just a super nerd, a lot of us are, I start to think of science fiction and go, yeah, no, AI is scary. AI is scary, like that's what we have in our minds. And there's certain ways to ask questions on surveys that could sway people in either direction and be more accurate than others, and really a better way to ask questions to prey upon what the real problem is, right? And I think the real problem is that attackers are using all types of different technology, sociology, and social engineering and other things that make us worried, right? AI might be one of those, but again, what does that really mean?
A better question is not to say something like, is AI, for example, killer Terminator robots from the future, a bad thing for your company? I mean, that's going to get you a certain kind of response. Whereas if you go in there and you say, are you concerned that the rate of attack and the ability of attackers will accelerate beyond your ability to respond to them?
Yes.
That's a much better question that maybe gets you, I mean, I didn't do item analysis on that either, but, you know, hey, I take your eigenvalues greater than 1 and raise you 1 horns test. So there you go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a nerd. No way, man.
Yeah, in the rubric, and it could have been a rubric-style question, right? Which allows you to. But if you don't ask the question right, you can skew.
Oh,
the data can be skewed, or you can have different. Yeah, the whole way that when we cover surveys, we basically do it for that reason.
And as
we can pick apart the data.
As we all know, AI is one of the most misunderstood and nebulous things, and it can mean different things to different people. I, for one, welcome our coming AI overlords. Just got it out there, but I mean, mostly, I don't think, you know, and it depends on who you're asking.
Mm-hmm.
If you go ask not Kevin, he has a different answer than if you ask a CEO who maybe saw The Matrix last week or Terminator.
Or some other weird sci-fi movie.
Yeah, or Her.
Her was a good one. There was another one that I can't remember the name of, but he's like an insurance investigator, and AI robots are...
a salesman.
No, he's an insurance investigator for AI robots, right? And AI robots are a commonplace thing. We have those like we do, you know, computers in our home today. Everyone's got an AI robot, and the AI robots are programmed with their values that every sci-fi movie tries to elaborate on, that they will never harm human beings, right?
Asimov's Code of Robotics.
Exactly, exactly. And so, you know, in the opening scene, he goes into a house where the AI robot supposedly killed the dog. And he walks into the house, and he takes a knife from the kitchen, and he holds it above his hand in front of the robot, and he drops it. So it's going to go through his hand, but the AI robot sees that and grabs the knife before it harms him. He's like, see, your robot's fine. Like, you have no... And then it's all about how the robots are developing more and more advanced artificial intelligence and becoming a race of their own and all that stuff.
I have a void conf test right here on my laptop. We could do it right now if you'd like. So.
A void? What is void conf?
From Blade Runner.
Oh yeah. That was a horrible AI test though. That was.
A turtle is lying on its back in the sun.
It was terrible.
I know. Real AI would have just been like, okay, so what?
It was terrible because it was defeated, actually. This is really why in Blade Runner why it was defeated, right?
Of course,
yeah, it was pretty bad.
I just thought they should have ripped his throat out in the first scene. It was like, the end.
AI
turtle is lying on his back in the sun. Fin. Sorry, please don't hate me. I like Blade Runner, but...
No, I do too.
Only the
I do too. And true nerds like us are picking apart the things like that.
I know,
but anyway.
But I still enjoyed the movie.
I did too. Not the new one. The new one was just
I didn't
okay.
like the new
one. I didn't like
it's visually exciting, but
it was
real draggy.
This week in movie reviews from
Ooh, Security Weekly movie reviews. Cool.
Oh, let's talk about stealing cars.
Yeah.
Watch a hacker steal a Tesla.
Hell yeah.
So there's been, and I want to get everyone else's opinion on this. So really quick, there have been 2 instances in the past year or two where I've got a somewhat new view on the security of my vehicle. And Sam is going to laugh at this, right? Because we were in D.C. for an event, and we rent Suburban because 3 of us, we got a lot of back in gear too, right? That we have to haul around to do the audio video stuff for the conference, and we rent the Suburban. We get all our stuff loaded in the Suburban, and we realize the battery's dead. And so we call the attendant over, right? We get out, we shut the door, and I realized that I locked the door, or the door was because the battery was dead, right? And even though I had the key, I forget the exact scenario, but basically our stuff got locked in the car that the battery had died, which means we can't get the lock open because the battery's completely dead and all our stuff is in it. And, like 10 minutes later, the person comes back, they shove a wedge in the door, right? And they get some other thing that looks like a blood pressure monitor, right? But the bulb kind of blows up to open the door up a little more. And they stick a rod in there and they push the button. So I don't know why the key fob didn't work, but the button did. I forget the exact scenario, but right, they push maybe I left the keys in the car and shut it. And so they reach in and they push the unlock button and the door unlocks.
There you go.
Right? And then it was snowing out one day last year, and my F-150, right? When I put the keys in the car and I turned the car on to start it, I had pushed the lock button on the key fob, and then I shut the door, and then I went to go in the back door to get my snow brush. Oh, shit. Car's running, snowing out, middle of winter, and my keys are locked in the car. Same thing. Dude came like, AAA, 10 minutes later, shoved the wedge in the door, stuck the rod in, unlocked the car. You're good to go, sir.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about all these like huge technological hacks into a car, like I think it's cool and all, but it's kind of like home security. Like if you really want to get in, I guess it's like network security and, computer security too. Like if you really want to get in, there are ways. And so is stealing a car really like this sexy thing? I don't know. Because you could just, again, wedge the door open enough to unlock the car.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just like you had keys. And, I mean, I guess a key is supposed to protect you.
Yeah.
So it's like, ooh, a key. The steering column locks. Ooh, that's going to protect you.
Right.
No. I saw something on a meme the other day where they'd taken a metal panel and they welded it over the foot pedals and put a big padlock through it. And I was like, well, that would work till they get the bolt cutters out.
Yeah.
And, I mean, this is no different. I mean, I think it's just I'm not at all concerned about thievery stuff. I'm more concerned about people being able to take control of vehicles while they're being driven and things like that, because that's a bigger threat to me. I mean, if somebody steals my car, I call the insurance company. I go, yeah, it's gone. It's a drag and it sucks. Or if, my keys get locked in, I call them and they come Slim Jim it and whatever. And okay, so I mean, people are always going to find workarounds because these things are never going to be 100% secure because they're designed for end users.
Yeah,
they're designed with the idea that most people aren't trying to steal your car. There's somebody going to steal it, and if somebody's going to steal it, and it's possible to unlock it, and there almost always has to be a fail-safe because you don't want a car that, they locked their keys in the car. I'm sorry, sir, you're just done.
You're screwed.
That vehicle will sit there until it rusts away to nothing. So that's life. You're done.
You lost your two-factor authentication token, therefore you're screwed, right? So, you didn't put a backup in?
So it's just like a PC. If you secure it to the point where nobody can ever get in it again, if it gets locked, you're going to have a lot of cars sitting around that they have to, and if you try to tow it away, it goes off with a 5-kiloton nuclear blast. So, pretty soon we won't be able to do anything because there'll just be cars sitting all over the roads with like a red light blinking on going, do not approach. Keep summer safe.
I mean, you could be like Kevin and just live in Boston where you don't need a car, and then you don't have to worry about your car being stolen, right, Kevin?
It's true.
Put a pit bull in it.
No cars.
Put a pit bull in the back seat.
One of my contractors did that. It wasn't a pit bull, it was a boxer, but he had these boxers in the back of his truck, and I was like, oh, cool, like, you got dogs, dude. And I went to, reach my hand out to let it sniff me, and it almost bit my hand off. He's like, dude, you don't want to do that. I'm like, well, you could have told me that before I, went to pet your dog. He's like, yeah, no, they don't.
Did your dog bite?
Yeah, he's like, they don't
movies,
like
right?
that. I'm like, dude, what's? He's like, well, we'd go to Home Depot, a couple times a week because we're a contractor, and he's like, people would break into our truck or our van and steal our tools. He's like, once we put the dogs in our car, he's like, dude, we haven't lost any tools since. No one wants to go near our cars. I'm like, you know what? You should come on the show and talk about security because that makes perfect sense, right?
My brother had 2 Rottweilers in the garage protecting his Harleys, and they shot him through the windows.
Well, yeah, but that's a good point, a horrible story to enforce a good point that, the motivation of an attacker, right? And, I think that's a lot of what Yossi was talking about and covering your tracks. Like, you got to go through a lot of extra work or be able to have the lack of morals or whatever to go in and shoot dogs, or the target has to be of high value.
Just not care if your tracks are covered.
Yeah, or not care if your tracks are covered.
I don't care if there's a camera getting my picture. I'll wear a ski mask and I'll walk in and with a shotgun and whatever.
Shoot everyone and take the car, but it has to be of a certain value because there is risk associated with that.
You bet.
But there has to be a value of the target and motivation of the attacker.
But as long as that needle's pointing toward the end user, a car driver or whatever, it's always going to have some risk associated with it. There's always going to be a way around it. And the minute there's a way around it, somebody's going to find that way out. They're going to publish it, and somebody's going to misuse it, and they're going to steal a Tesla or whatever.
Right.
And
you're limiting not limiting necessarily, but you're pushing your attackers to have that level of motivation, ingenuity, and resources to be able to pull off.
You just decide where that arrow is pointing.
Like without anything protecting my car, if I forget to leave it unlocked, people can walk up at night and go in the car and take whatever they want, right? But if I put a dog in the car, they either have to have the lack of morals to be able to kill the dog, or have a stake with some tranquilizers in it. But it requires planning and targeting, right? And so now you're kind of skewing your attack profile in a certain direction.
Or just buy a car no one would ever want to steal. I had a friend who did that.
Well, which is interesting because, like, I'm going to go buy a Honda, but it turns out, like, model Hondas, because they're so popular, the parts are in such high demand
this guy bought, like, a 1967 Chevrolet Biscayne and left the keys in the ignition. And it's like nobody ever stole it.
I did the same exact thing with a bicycle. I used to have to commute up to Boston every day, and I'd ride a bicycle to the train station. I bought the crappiest possible bicycle and always found the nicest one that was chained up somewhere and just put mine right next to the nice one.
Yeah.
I didn't have to lock mine.
That's what you do with skis. When you go skiing, if you have the hottest new skis, you have to bury them and hide them somewhere. But usually I just take my ratty skis and I put them next to some really hot skis that everybody's going to steal. And I'm like, why would they steal my skis when they could take these really nice ones? Mine are all beat up. So,
is there a parallel to cybersecurity in that when you're defending your organization? Or there really isn't. Like there's that whole like. Oh, there's a bear chasing us in the woods.
That's more like honeypotting kind of stuff, and that stuff has all kinds of. We could talk about that for days because it's like a real issue.
Kevin,
I was going to say honeypots. You beat me to it.
But,
sorry.
To kind of wrap around the conversation back to the article. Don't make it easy for the attacker. I feel like some of my challenges with these keyless entry systems is that if you understand the technology and there is a drive, at least with a physical system, there's a time element to it. Don't let someone just walk by and clone your key. And
that's right. That's what Paul was getting to. Was just like, if you have to have skills, if the keys are in the ignition, the car's just sitting there, somebody may take it. If some 12-year-old kid may say, hey, let's go for a ride. But if you got to actually go out and read and study and figure out a way to do this and buy some equipment, all of a sudden you've limited that narrow band of people that are going to do that. So.
Right. But I think those people are going to do that because of the scenario you talked about. It's not going to leave any evidence.
Right.
If I have to deal with dogs and cameras and all this other stuff, I could very easily leave a trail that someone could follow. However, if I do my research and I do it electronically, I can, in the middle of the night, unlock the car, get in it, it starts, and I drive away really fast. That's leaving very little evidence behind. It's got your house, too, right? If I make someone smash a window that makes a lot of noise, leaves behind evidence. However, if they're going to bypass my electronic lock, they might be able to get in and out, and there's really no evidence they've been there. The longer the time passes that they've been there, the less likely it is that I might find them. It's an interesting forensics thing that I don't know if you've run into, Doug, is that police officers now are kind of recommending that you check your home router, like Wi-Fi stuff, to see if there was a crime committed, if you can identify the person's phone that might have been connected to your Wi-Fi network. Now, I think, like, if you think about Pony Express's solution, I know, like, what Wi-Fi devices and clients might have been in my general vicinity at any given time. That's what, one of the things that it does. And in certain scenarios, that's really awesome, right? But for the regular home user, that is still applicable in that if it's someone that's been to my house before and connected to my Wi-Fi, if they got their phone on them when they're committing a crime and they've been to my house before as a friend or a family member or whatever, and they automatically associate, you go back through your logs and be like, yeah, like Jim's phone was connected when that crime was committed, therefore maybe it was him, and you can submit that as evidence. I thought that was a really interesting aspect of forensics.
It's the coming days of everything.
Yeah, and that's like a new kind of thing. Right now, everyone's got Wi-Fi in their homes, and everyone's got phones that have Wi-Fi. That wasn't always the case.
Soho routers now have more logging capacity. They have remote logging capacity, reporting capacity, and if that model switches away from this end-user-driven Soho model and it moves over to, say, like a Comcast, a Cox, a Verizon is actually providing all that equipment.
And Cox Communications has some pretty advanced services now. You can get cameras and all kinds of stuff.
Well, they could let all that stuff start phoning home and collecting information and saying, okay, look what we saw. We saw all these things connected, and here was a SIM card that connected. And
Yeah, it's interesting.
Privacy will be no more.
Note to self: when committing crime at Paul's house, bring a burner.
Oh yeah,
I turn your phone on, leave your phone at home, right?
But even then, when you turn that burner on the first time, if it auto associates with the network, let's say it's Comcast that has citywide wireless, they already can track you all the way to Paul's house.
Or
Wi-Fi is extremely pervasive.
Well, or if you've got a phone that let's say it's a AT&T burner phone, and AT&T burner phones like to connect to AT&T hotspots. If I'm impersonating a hotspot, that was my thinking of kind of the honeypot scenario, right? Like I'm always just broadcasting for in AT&T the popular hotspots. I can catch people that might have that phone and automatically go, oh, there's an open Wi-Fi network. Like keep an open Wi-Fi network of any kind. Maybe name it a couple of different things that are popular. Phones will associate to that because that's what they're programmed to do. Yep. That can be an interesting thing for security purposes.
The evil twin attack. It's all based on the wireless network name, not the ESID at the actual access point.
But translating that into the physical crime level, I thought was really interesting. Something I hadn't really considered before. So.
It brings up an interesting point. If I'm the theoretical attacker that's looking to steal a car, and I've never stolen a car before, is it easier to learn how to break into something electronically, just with the resources we have of open source information, toolkits, researchers, all the open source software, or to learn the physical aspects of, say, breaking into a car? Not talking about smashing a window, more of, say, jimmying it open or being able to pick the lock.
Yeah, and I think that's shifting, Kevin. I think it's a great point. I think it's shifting, right? Like the access to information, like when we think about before the internet, which really wasn't that long ago, so access to information's easier. More things are connected and electronic and have wireless connectivity. And so those two things combined, does that mean that, and actually when we've done this show in years past, I've talked about this, that attackers might start shifting, right? Like all these hacks we talk about, or even talked about 10 years ago on the show, are like for security nerds that we're doing wireless research and we're like, yeah, this could be used for an attack. But fast forward 10, 20, 30 years, now those are just commonplace. Again, this is something we see in science fiction, right? Technology evolves, but the access to information and how technology works and how to hack it also evolves, and ease of access to that information is a lot better. Now you've got
it's the unpatched server model. I mean, it's just you go out looking for old stuff that's not been updated, and the data's there, and you got information.
And it's just time too. Like there'll be a day where new homes and existing homes will all be upgraded to have some kind of smart home technology that's commonplace, and that's once it becomes more big. We see this with Linux, OS 10, and Windows hacking, right? The more ubiquitous technologies get a lot more attention, and those attacks become more mainstream. I think the same thing is going to happen with IoT and physical security as well.
I do too.
But California is working to fix all of these issues, and in particular the password issue, because if you got default passwords on your devices, California made some news when it passed its Consumer Privacy Act, or CCPA, with the resistance of tech companies, who many of them are based in California, which is interesting. So the new legislation is geared towards addressing password security. The article states that most of our connected devices are given a default password, and now that's against the law. And they say that the practice of easy default passwords are going to come to an end in 2020. How about that?
I think it's a good idea.
I'd like to see them enforce it.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do they? That's a great question, Kevin.
Won't they just enforce it the same way they do like emissions on cars, that you can't sell the thing in California if it doesn't meet the law?
Yeah.
They just have to be certified, so it's like EPA, FDA, anything else, and they say you can't sell tomatoes that have DDT on them.
How do you constantly monitor that device?
They don't constantly monitor.
Maybe it's not it might not be a proactive thing. It might be a reactive thing. At least they now have a legal framework to work within, that in the event there's maybe theoretical breach, they can say, you use default credentials in this IoT device, we can now take legal action against not just the company that was attacked, but the organization that built the hardware in the first place. And that could actually be a great thing, because it could force better security downstream.
And you have to get your product certified to sell. So you go to the office and say, here's router X0579, and it's certified. and then California retailers can sell that product. And if they're selling illegal products, that would be just like them selling cigarettes without tax stamps or whatever. And yeah, the same thing. They can go prosecute.
Well, I think in a lot of industries, right, you've got your product for the rest of the world, and now you have your product for California.
Right.
Right. Like I've got my straws that I can sell in the rest of the world, but if it's a straw for California, it's a paper straw, right? Like it's
steel.
Or it's a metal straw.
I use steel straws.
Along those lines, I love metal straws. Apollo turned me on to metal straws when he first started coming here making cocktails like years ago. And I'm like, dude, I'm totally sold. I'm like, first of all, it's cool looking. It's awesome to have a metal straw in my drink. Also, it's reusable. I can put it in a dishwasher at like the highest temperature setting on sanitize, and a steel straw is awesome. If there's junk inside the straw, like it just melts at higher temperatures. It's an awesome thing. But back to my point that you're going to start adjusting your products based on where you're selling them and say, well, just for California, yeah, no default passwords, but the support costs for the entire rest of the world, let alone the U.S., is too high. So I'm still going to have my default password because I don't get as many calls to support. I think that's the crux of the issue as to why we have default passwords still today, is that there's higher support costs once you start to grow as a company associated with not having a default password. I can go, oh yeah, like I just reset my device or I got a new device. Like, what's the password? Oh, it's right there. Or let me pick one in the beginning. I don't remember what it is, and so I'm going to file a ticket because I lost my password.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I think that's a really fair point for devices that are assumed that someone would log in to them. You know, you buy your switch, your router, your firewall, default passwords. You know, hopefully you know someone's actually going to log in and change it. But your security camera that mom and pop are going to buy for their house, I think that's a little bit different scenario where not having a default password doesn't impact support. But it also makes the device a lot better because it's a $25 camera. And they're never going to do anything about it. It's going to break. They're probably going to buy a new one. And that's the thing that's being weaponized when we talk about these IoT botnets. It's all default credentials and DVRs and home security systems. So I think breaking out the class of hardware, I think could be really beneficial when talking about default credentials, because there's devices you can assume people are going to log into, and then there's consumer devices that we can assume people are not going to log into.
Yeah, and there's different aspects of the password when we talk about IoT devices that we've talked about in years past, right? There's the default password we're talking about now. There's the fact that, well, if you have users choose their password, they might pick a really poor password.
Yeah.
And therefore, I can easily brute force it. And then the third thing, which is even more concerning, is that there's a username and password that the developers put in as a what we call a backdoor. What the developers put in there is for some functional debugging kind of purposes that you can use to log in. And those are three very distinct problems in this new California law. How do they define the default password, right? If they define it as the initial password that you use when you configure the device, well, that's one scenario. What about a really crappy password? And any of these IoT devices enforcing some kind of password complexity, so I can't just make the password 1234, or if the username is root, I can't make it TOOR, right? And then the other scenario, a whole completely new set of problems, is there's some kind of credentials embedded in the firmware that it doesn't matter what the user chooses or not, whether they change the default or choose a strong password. I've got a set of credentials where I can get into their device anyway.
Yeah. There's a lot of issues here.
So I've always broken it out into those three kind of distinct buckets, and I think if we're going to have legislation, it should, some governing body should start to raise awareness and enforce those things. And when you think about administrative access, also you have to take into account, is it the user, like, grandma's traveling and she goes, well, I really need to get into my home router from the internet. Let me go log in because I need to update firmware, right? Probably not the case. More likely that the provider of that camera that Kevin's talking about is going, well, I want to automatically push a firmware update, And in order to do that, I need some level of authentication to that device to be able to go push it out. And maybe that, like we were talking about Cox Communications before here in Rhode Island, right? You can subscribe to services that have cameras that monitor your home. I would assume in that scenario, the provider should go, oh, there's a really heinous security vulnerability. I need to push a new firmware update out to tens of thousands of devices. By the way, and I think we run into trouble is, oh, there's some kind of backdoor into those things. And only we're supposed to know about that, but lo and behold, someone reverse engineers the firmware and goes, yeah, your admin password, right? Or, Cox admin password.
Watch the repair guy when they're working on the system go, oh, you just push the enter key 6 times and then type 777 and you're in.
Yeah. So there's all those back doors. So, let's not have those. Let's have some real type of certificate authentication, which we talked about with DigiCert, which Microsoft is pushing with its Azure Sphere project to go, if you're a provider of these devices, we give you a secure way to update them. And that's what I think is the future. Take it out of the user's hands for this. A lot of the backdoors are remote administrative access that most users don't care about.
Well, that's what I was kind of clumsily saying earlier, was that I think providers are going to slowly create the board. They're going to pull the border back from you.
Yeah.
So it's just going to be like this equipment, or push the border onto you more. It's like their border is going to intrude into your life more. So now it's like, we control your thermostat, so you don't have to.
Yep.
And all you do is say, oh, yeah, I don't know, I might get my thermostat from Cox, and we don't know how it works. We've never logged. We don't know anything about it. It just sits up there, and when we need it repaired, we call the help desk, and they send it.
And that's what I love about Azure Sphere, is that it's a framework that allows the providers to do that securely. Because we don't want to put the burden of security when you have 24 devices in your home that are remotely connected, your thermostat and your Wi-Fi network and your doorbell and your home security system and cameras. So you could easily have a dozen or 2 devices on your network that are like, most people are like, I don't know what these things do.
Password.
I don't know if they're secure. But the provider, I think the responsibility should fall, like a managed services provider, managed security services provider, should fall on them, that they're controlling the basic aspects of IoT security.
Or they'll at least start selling that to you.
Yeah,
they're going to come and go, do you want to not worry at all and never have to deal with this again? Just buy our $19.95 a month contract, which you add onto your current bundle, and we will put all these devices in your home, and you'll never, ever have to deal with them. You just get the convenience without any of the worry.
And you hope they do security right, and you hope they monitor security so that when you have a baby monitor, that you're not having to worry about securing it, right? And that's another scenario too, right?
Yeah.
New families that have, have their baby, they want a baby monitor. When you have your first, like I did when I had my first child, I was like, I'm excited to buy this baby monitor technology. I'm a security nerd, right? So you can research and monitor and control that. But if you're not, how do you know that the baby monitor you have is not a backdoor or some kind of heinous vulnerability from China? Yeah.
Is she asleep? I think so. Okay, come on over. I'm like, yeah, she's asleep.
But it's so creepy, right? We've seen stories where they're selling access to these devices and all these kind of heinous things, right? It's awful.
Yeah.
And but it's not just a camera. It's also a two-way communication device. It's a listening device. It's a camera and the whole thing. And it's just scary.
So we just provide all that for you. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, and then you have to trust your provider, like Cox.
Yeah, but the liability shifts then too, because then there's a contract between you, and now it's like that insurer underwriter liability piece. Cox didn't want to go get sued when something bad happens to a child.
We hope it becomes a business driver.
Right.
I think is that's what I mean. Scenario you're talking about. Yeah.
It's like because you do not ever want to go to court with something about a child.
Yeah,
or something bad happened to a child, because you're going to lose that case. You don't ever want to go to court. They're going to be paying out. If that's happening all over the place, you're going to be paying.
Cox is in big trouble, right? If they're responsible for 5,000 customers whose cameras got hacked and they were selling. China was selling access to those to pedophiles or whatever the case may be, right? That's bad.
That's going to be a massive lawsuit. So their underwriters are going to make sure that they're not, that they're securing those devices for you. Then if you choose to do it yourself, it's on you.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll take care of it for you, and that's the business model I see. I mean, that's the utility business model. I mean, that's why the gas company doesn't want you to fix your own gas line. They want to provide coverage for all that, because they don't want you to go in there and go, hey, I think I'll just take this wrench and a lighter, and we'll go in there and see if there's a leak. And they don't want that happening, because then there's a big crater where your house used to be, and it's on the evening news.
I have a funny story about that, actually.
Uh-oh. There's so many funny stories about craters.
No, about the gas company when I moved into my house that I'm in now, and we moved in on Halloween, and lo and behold, we didn't have any gas service. And we called the gas company, and they're like, yeah, it's about 3 weeks. And we're like, hold on. It's November 1st. Like, it's cold in November in New England. Like, what? What are we? They're like, yeah, no, 3 weeks. And so, well, yeah, after the show, I'll tell you the rest of the story, how we got gas service. You go through social engineering, right, and other methods to make sure that you can heat your home when you're presented with that scenario.
Can I heat my house with a charcoal brazier?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I can just turn on my gas fire. No, I can't do that either, right?
Well, we got 8 kids down here, and they're cold. I'll get it working. Don't worry. They'll be out there in about 10 minutes.
We didn't have kids at that time, so it was
that's
more,
what you tell them, though.
It is what you tell them. It was more creative.
We take in really, really cute orphans, and I'll just get down there with a pipe wrench, and I've got a lighter, and I think we'll be all right. Don't worry.
I got to keep the body warm.
Yeah. Kevin, you had some stories in there.
I have a few. I feel like it's my responsibility to cover breaches of the week.
Yeah,
so,
let's do it.
Well, let's do an update to a previous story of British Airways. Now, if you're not familiar with the British Airways breach, it was about a month ago. It was a part of the series of breaches that impacted Newegg, I think another website, and then British Airways is all part of the Mage Card Group.
Yep.
They have announced that another 185,000 customers had their information impacted. So sorry if you flew British Airways, there's now a greater chance your customer information was released. So that's the update. The breach of the week, I would leave to a Washington-based ISP known as Pocket INET, and I apologize if that is your ISP. They found that their entire configuration from an operational perspective, everything from administrative passwords to network diagrams, absolutely everything was left publicly exposed on a Amazon S3 bucket. So that's not ideal.
How does that happen? Like, what's the decision process to say all of that information, we're just going to put in an S3 bucket so we can share it with everyone?
And the sheer size of this.
Yeah, like that's massive, dude.
73 gigabytes of data. Now, that's not just we forgot to put a JPEG somewhere that described how our network topology. That's a serious amount of information that was described as everything you would need to take over really everything.
On an S3 bucket.
It happens. Yeah, when we had Apollo on just a few weeks ago, S3 is a great thing. It's something you need to monitor. It's unfortunately seems to be incredibly easy to inadvertently push things to be publicly facing, and if you're not constantly checking that.
I get it. Like, you have to share information internally, and the decision may drive you towards, let's put an S3 so we don't have to store 73 gig locally, even though it's not that much, but we need to share data, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing that you should be concerned about. But the second thing, after you make the decision, we're going to store all of our sensitive data in the cloud on S3, should be, and I think this is where we failed as a security community, it should be, how do we protect that data, right? And then for them to make the second decision to not even consider the security on that, or somehow miss the configuration as to where that data might be exposed, that's the second failure. Like, okay, we're going to store our data in the cloud. And most mature organizations, largely like in finance, are like, yes, great savings, we're going to move to the cloud. But their security team is asking questions about what's the security controls behind storing that in the cloud. This organization said, nope, we're going to store it in the cloud, and yeah, security's great. Like, the cloud is secure. We don't have to worry about it. And then it leaks. That's just...
But I think one of the things that might make this one even worse is that in the article here it says, UpGuard says the firm contacted Pocket INET on October 11th of this year, the same day the exposed bucket was discovered. But the ISP took an additional week before the data was adequately secured. So they were aware that this was out there for anybody, and they just kind of seemingly took their time to actually secure it.
Well, it's like, okay, we got notified.
Yep.
I'm not taking responsibility for this. I'm going to call Paul, and then Paul says, "Oh, it's not on us." And they call upstairs and go, "We got to get legal." And legal calls back, and they says, "Oh yeah, he's out of town. He'll be back tomorrow. Let's get a meeting. Is Wednesday good?" Wednesday we sit down. They go, "So what happened?" And then we spend a day or two trying to explain exactly what this even means to legal, who then turns around and goes, "So is it bad?" And you go, "Yeah, we probably exposed 73 gigs of data." And they're like, "Is that a lot or a little?" I'm not sure. So what do we do? And then they have to get the CEO and the board, and they go, "So what do we do? Do we reveal it? Does anybody know? Who knows? Will anybody find out? And what have we lost?"
And there's some poor security person jumping up and down in the back of those meetings going, "I told you so," or biting their tongue.
And they're going, "It's his fault. He's fired. So he's taking the blame. Benny, you're gone. I'm really sorry to do this to you, buddy, but you know what? You screwed up, son. You're out. You'll never work in this town again."
And that person's been jumping up and down about security for months.
"I sent 27 memos over the last 3 months about these problems." And they're like, "Right. So you didn't communicate effectively, so you're dismissed. Have a nice day. And pick up your packet on the way out. Oh, actually, come over here, and I'm going to slap you."
I mean, pure speculation, but I think Doug is spot on, actually.
I've watched that stuff. I mean, we're going, we told you that. Consultants told you, your people were telling you, and you wouldn't believe them, so you hired consultants who told you.
Right.
And the CEO's going, "I was not at that meeting, actually." I actually have video of you at the meeting. You were sitting there going, "Yes, yes, yes. What a great idea. We need to do something about it." "No, that wasn't me. I was never there."
Well, and then the executives know that they'll get, at best, home confinement, like the Equifax.
Well, yeah, if they even get that.
For insider trading, I saw an article briefly that they got home confinement. Is that something like that?
They give you an ankle bracelet.
Yeah.
You get confined to your $12 million apartment in Manhattan and go, "Now, you can't go more than, say like 5 miles east-west and 10 miles north-south from where you live." I think that's punishment now.
Right.
"Bob, I don't want to see you down here again. Now take your 79 million golden parachute and get the hell out of here."
I might be misremembering this article, so don't quote me exactly to your listeners. But I feel like the article about the home confinement was not an executive from Equifax. It was actually a web developer who was charged for insider trading because he was asked to develop a website that allows a individual to query if their information was breached, and they guessed it was actually their own organization, and then decided to put whatever you do in the stock market to assume you're going to lose money, and then was charged for insider trading.
Interesting.
So the web developer is the only person, to my knowledge, that's actually been charged with a crime within Equifax, which I think
might actually be punishment for home confinement then.
I mean, I don't know. If you're a web developer, you might work from home anyway. So,
well, yeah, it's like, so what's different today? Oh, I can't go outside, which I would never do anyway.
The light.
That's a horrible stereotype, but more than
it works for me. It's like, if they come in with, "You can't leave your office ever again." Like,
it's still not a huge impact. Even
no, it'd be like, well, okay, I guess I'll just have to stay here.
Go out, like if you're a web developer, or working in technology, you can work from home anyway, and if there's no financial impact to you, you can still work your job, maybe, or whatever. And
the drones bring you pizza, and you're good.
Well, and if you work in a major city, right, the impact is even more insignificant, right? Because you can have anything delivered. I mean, even if you have Amazon or whatever, you can have anything delivered to your house, right?
That's right.
Anyway.
So I have one more story that
Let's do it. One more story, Kevin. One more
story.
As this is public service announcement. So we've done our breaches, we've done our silly story. Now let's do the public service. If you use WebEx on a Windows machine, you should probably update. Is a advisory released from two gentlemen from CounterHack, Ron Bowes and Jeff Junkin, who figured out that you could execute arbitrary code at system privileges on a Windows machine if you have WebEx installed. So I highly suggest that you update, although this did not seem to impact Windows 10, but or at least from a remote perspective. Maybe that's different when we're talking about local. But so if you're using WebEx, update, please.
Trying to see if Doug has
Patrick's hacking me now, so.
In knowing both of those individuals that discovered this vulnerability, which is really awesome, I can see them going, yeah, we had to use WebEx to like talk to people.
Tell everybody.
And like, I'm really curious, like, what vulnerabilities those expose my own systems, and them going, well, here's a really heinous vulnerability, and we should probably get that fixed. So I think it's a combination of awesome company led by Ed Skodas, who'll be coming on in December to talk about the Holiday Hack Challenge, by the way, and two really phenomenal researchers that work for Ed's company that are really contributing back to the greater good. I'm really glad you kind of ended the show with that story, because it restores my faith in humanity that there are
the
really
needs
smart
of the many outweigh the needs of the
right?
few.
Yeah, smart people that are looking out for everyone. Yeah.
And this is not they dropped something out of nowhere. This is very well documented with their timeline with releasing this to Cisco, actually, all the way back in July.
Yeah. And conferencing software in general, absolutely. It's had a track record of making sure it's updated. The scary part for me with conferencing software is, like, every time it updates, it leaves the older version behind, which could potentially be exploited. So thank you, Ron and Jeff. You're awesome. Sweet. With that will conclude this week's edition of Paul Security Weekly. Doug, take us out.
Over and